Chapter 732. A long time later, she, who was already known as Fairy Ziling, was asked what was the reason for her rapid growth from a crippled maid to become Yiqing Luo's right-hand man. Ziling Fairy said that she would never forget her Mrs. Warm Palm on top of her head, dispelling the frost in her heart for more than 10 years. It was her own miss who gave her enough courage. Gave her the courage to stand by Yiqing Luo's side. Not worried about being abandoned. Not worried about being abandoned. After Ziling had taken the bone-healing pill, Yiqing Luo had started the treatment with acupuncture and profound qi. On the day before the holiday, Yiqing Luo specially looked for Ghost Doctor to carefully confirm the treatment process. At this time, Yiqing Luo's hands were smooth, calm, and quickly and accurately inserted the acupuncture points. This kind of acupuncture, every needle was as painful as scraping the bone. Yiqing Luo had inserted a total of 91 needles. Ziling was completely in pain. Her face was pale, and her head was full of cold sweat. But from the beginning to the end, Ziling stubbornly did not make any sound, not even a cry of pain. Yiqing Luo withdrew her hand and wiped the sweat on her face. Looking at Ziling, who was biting the white cloth and breathing heavily, the smile in her eyes became more gentle. She did not expect Ziling to be so tolerant. She really trusted her wholeheartedly. Her willpower was so strong that she was ashamed of her inferiority. Don't get off the bed before your legs are healed. I will find a maid to take care of you. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes and said faintly. Ziling's face immediately showed fear. Miss, you can't do that. Now Miss has finally gotten the attention of Old Madam. If for Ling Old Madam had always been the most concerned about etiquette. A maid lying on the bed, and still a maid to take care of her? If this were to be passed to Old Madam, wouldn't Miss be punished? Do you think your Miss needs to look at Old Madam's face? Yiqing Luo shook her head and directly interrupted Ziling's words. You just need to listen to my arrangements. Ziling's lips slightly pursed, obviously still worried that because of her relationship, her Miss would be implicated. Do you still want to follow my footsteps? Do you still want to train hard after your legs are healed and accompany me to the Heavenly Academy? Yes. Then be obedient. Yiqing Luo looked at Ziling's teary eyes and couldn't help but rub her head again. If Ziling were to dress up properly and gain some weight, she would definitely be a great beauty in the Lolita category. The current Yi family would grant Yiqing Luo's every request. Even if old Grandmadam had some words against Yiqing Luo because of her rudeness. But now, who would dare to offend this increasingly dazzling seventh young mistress? This was the last woman in the Yi clan who could bring honor to the Yi clan. Even if the elder ancestor was angry, he had to endure it. Of course, there was another important point. Because of Madame Yuchi's rudeness towards Yiqing Luo, Old Grandmadam had already stripped away Madame Yuchi's authority and handed it over to third concubine, who was also Madame Biming. This Biming clan was the concubine daughter of a great clan from another continent. Speaking of which, he and Biming Lian Sheng from the Devil class had a little bit of kinship. Yi Tianquang had once fallen in love with Lady Biming at first sight when he was working in another continent. He immediately married her and brought her back to the Yi family, becoming the Yi family's third concubine. It had been a few months of sweetness, until both Madame Yuchi and Lady Biming became pregnant one after another. Yi Tianquang was originally a person who was unwilling to be left out, so he had another 4 wives. This was a story for another time. But, in her impression, this Lady Biming only had one son. She was also the most peaceful one in the backyard. Chapter 733. But Yiqing Luo thought that this Biming clan was the smartest woman in the backyard. She didn't fight or snatch, but could give birth to a son and raise him. What the backyard saw the most was the battle between Madame Yuchi and the 4th branch. On the contrary, Biming clan was so quiet that people had completely forgotten her existence. If it wasn't for her son, who was in charge of all the expenses of Three Springs sect, the entire Yi family would have treated her as if she didn't exist. That's right. Biming clan's son was the Yi family's housekeeper, the second young master Yifeng Ru. Now that Madame Yuqi had fallen and Baiming clan had taken over, it had deeply confirmed Yi Qing Luo's guess. Not to mention the collapse of the second branch. The third branch would naturally take over. That woman from the fourth branch, who could fight with Madame Yuqi for so many years, was definitely not a good person. But she had fallen into the hands of the second branch, Baiming clan. Baiming clan was definitely the smartest woman. Just like now, she knew how to see the situation clearly and draw Yi Qing Luo to her side. Hearing that Yi Qing Luo wanted a well-behaved and smart maid to take care of Zi Ling, who had caught a cold, she quickly sent her daughter over. Yi Qing Luo had seen this maid before. She was indeed a smart maid, named Hong Mei, extremely well-behaved. When taking care of Zi Ling, she would never ask or say a word to others. In this Three Springs sect, which was filled with Madame Yuqi and old Madame spies, she was able to obtain this peace. Yi Qing Luo remembered this favor in her heart. That night, Yi Qing Luo went to the ancestral hall alone. This news quickly reached old Madame's ears. Old Madame rushed to the ancestral hall with the help of Baiming clan. Hearing this news, it would be a lie if old Madame said she wasn't angry. It had only been a day since she came back, and Yi Qing Luo had relied on her current power to be arrogant again and again, not even putting her old Madame in her eyes. She was the dignified old Madame of Three Springs sect. When had she been so despised by a junior? Since Yi Qing Luo came back, she tried every means to persuade her and even brought it out of the ancestral hall to let Yi Qing Luo see that slut to please her. Yi Qing Luo pretended not to hear. But at this time, she came to the ancestral hall alone. Wasn't this a slap to her face? She kindly invited Yi Qing Luo to have a meal with her, but Yi Qing Luo totally ignored her. In the evening, she shamelessly asked to see her again, but was told that she was taking care of a maid who had caught a cold, so she wouldn't be accompanying her. Even Yifeng Yu had rejected her. The old ancestor was completely enraged. His heart, liver, spleen, lungs, and kidneys were so angry that they were about to be displaced. Yi Qing Luo had never treated her as an elder or as a grandmother. She couldn't even compare to a maidservant. Taking care of a servant girl and refusing to accompany her own grandmother? Only Yi Qing Luo could use such a matter-of-fact tone to reject her. Right now, old Grandmadam had apparently forgotten that she herself had never treated Yi Qing Luo as her own granddaughter. At this moment, Yi Qing Luo was kneeling on the praying mat in the ancestral hall, her gaze staring deeply at the hundreds of memorial tablets on the shelf. Her mother's memorial tablet was placed in the leftmost corner. The two racks were arranged from top to bottom. But at the very bottom, on the far left, the arrangement of the tables was obviously not as neat as the top. Obviously, it had been tampered with. Her mother's memorial tablet was probably placed here temporarily by the old grandmadam to take the opportunity to please her. Yi Qing Luo snorted lightly. She really didn't understand. Her mother, as the legal wife of Yi Tianquang, was also included in the Yi family's genealogy. From the moment she married into the Yi family, she had followed Yi Tianquang wholeheartedly and gave birth to a son and a daughter for him. Until her death, she had never complained about Yi Tianquang. Chapter 734. Yi Qing Luo stood up and straightened her mother's tablet, placing it properly. Following that, she knelt back onto the praying mat. The entire ancestral hall was in silence. The huge incense burner was filled with densely packed burning incense as the smoke curled upwards, making the ancestral hall even more sinister. The candlelight swayed, elongating Yi Qing Luo's shadow, but it also softened the contour lines on Yi Qing Luo's face. Her pair of charming eyes were filled with traces of gentleness. "Mother," a soft sigh spilled out from her lips. In her heart, there were many questions and many words that she wanted to say to her mother. But now that she was here, she couldn't say anything and wasn't willing to say anything. Yi Qing Luo believed that there was a soul in this world. Otherwise, she wouldn't be here. Since her mother had already passed away for so long, why should she let her mother worry for her even in the afterlife? "Mother," I will take good care of little you. When little you really grows up, I will let him become the next sovereign. Yi-Ching Luo muttered softly. This was something that she had planned right from the start. She had no interest in the position of Three Springs sect sovereign. After all, she still had her own group of brothers, and she still needed to lead the world group to roam the entire Nirvana realm. She couldn't possibly bind herself to Three Springs sect to the West Continent. Just at this moment, Yi-Ching Luo's ears twitched as she heard a burst of mixed footsteps outside the ancestral hall. They came really quickly. Looked like old Grand Madam was really angered by her. Look at these footsteps. It was filled with energy. Before Yi-Ching Luo could stand up, the ancestral hall's door was pushed open fiercely as old Grand Madam's hoarse roar rang behind her. Old Seven, who allowed you to come to the ancestral hall alone? Yi-Ching Luo slowly stood up and gently patted the creases on her clothes before turning her head around. Old Grand Madam had already walked into the ancestral hall, and that aged face was filled with anger. His sinister long eyes seemed as though it was dipped in poison as he stared fiercely at her. This was the first time Yi-Ching Luo saw such obvious disgust on old Grand Madam's face. She had crossed old Grand Madam's bottom line this time round. Outside the ancestral hall, Yi-Ching Luo saw the Biming clan in her memories. She had a gentle appearance and belonged to the obedient type. She was dressed in a plain blue matriarch robe, and her temperament was like that of a white lotus. Even though she was the mother of a son, she still looked like a woman in her 20s. This kind of white lotus temperament was absolutely different from Madame Yuqi and Yi-Ching Qian's white lotus lady temperament. The white lotus of the Biming clan was a true white lotus. It was the kind of feeling that came out of the mud but was not tainted, the feeling of being clean but not bewitching. At this moment, Bei Mingshir's pair of lukewarm beautiful eyes were looking at Yi-Ching Luo worriedly. Behind her, there were 4 rough old maids. Yi-Ching Luo wasn't the slightest bit afraid of this dance. On the contrary, she revealed an enchanting smile. Didn't old Madam say that I can come to the ancestral hall to meet my mother? Yi-Ching Luo spoke extremely slowly, as though there was nothing wrong with her way of doing things. The elder master was so angry that his entire body was trembling. Yes, she had indeed intentionally used the excuse of letting Yi-Ching Luo meet that slut in the ancestral hall to please Yi-Ching Luo. But it didn't mean that Yi-Ching Luo could come to the ancestral hall alone. Moreover, Yi-Ching Luo didn't express her stance at that time. It was obvious that she had rejected, wasn't it? Now she came to the ancestral hall alone and was still so daring. Did she really think that there was no one else in the Yi family? The more old Grand Madam thought, the more she felt that she was being despised by a junior. Chapter 735. These words sounded like a granddaughter's grumbling to her grandmother. But listening carefully, one could hear the thick sarcasm in Yi-Ching Luo's words. What was said casually? What was meant by coaxing her to be happy? Wasn't this implying that her Yi family's old madam was full of lies, deceiving the younger generation? But unfortunately, old madam couldn't say a single word of rebuttal. Yi-Ching Luo gazed deeply at her mother's tablet. Her voice was cold. I'm glad that I came to the ancestral hall today. The main door of the ancestral hall was opened, and the wind blew into the ancestral hall. The candlelight swayed even more violently. Pulling Yi-Ching Luo's figure, it kept on shaking. It made half of her side face as hazy as a ghost. In this ancestral hall, it looked extremely gloomy. Old Madam frowned as her skinny fingers gripped the walking stick tightly. The old man's heavy breathing was extremely clear in the silent ancestral hall. Old Madam suppressed the surging panic in her heart. This was the Yi family's ancestral hall. All the ancestors of the Yi family. Even if the first madam really appeared, she would absolutely not do anything to her. If she wanted to find someone, it would be Yi-Ching Luo, that slut. Thinking of this, old madam's heart calmed down. If old madam doesn't treat my mother as a Yi family member, then pass my mother's ashes and tablet to me. I'm willing to worship my mother personally. As Yi-Ching Luo said, her gaze had shifted from the tablet back to old madam. That pair of long and narrow eyes, under the backlight of the candlelight, seemed to be burning with two balls of flames. There was no enchanting look in the past. There was only a piercingly cold gaze. Presumptuous! Old Madam couldn't hold back the anger in her heart, as she shouted sternly, "When did the Yi family treat you and your mother badly? When did the Yi family not treat you as a Yi family member? The Yi family had painstakingly raised you, yet you dare to say such treacherous words in front of your ancestors." Old Madam seemed to be very angry, as she raised her hand and landed it on Yiqing Luo's face. "It's my dereliction of duty that I didn't personally teach you the Yi family's rules. Now, in front of the ancestors, I'll teach you how to respect the elders properly." When the slap landed, the great ancestor's voice had already turned into one of gnashing teeth. His gloomy eyes were also filled with intense disgust. "Ancestor, no." Lady Biming stood at the door, anxious. As a concubine, she did not have the right to enter the ancestral hall. However, how could the great ancestor listen to Biming clan's pleas at this moment? Yiqing Luo naturally saw through Old Madam's emotions. How could he not see the profound qi lingering in the palm of the old ancestor? His words were accusing her of not knowing the rules. The truth was that he was infuriated by her and wanted to use this opportunity to teach her a lesson. If this slap really landed on her face, the teeth in her mouth would probably fly out. What's more, she would have to spend the next half a month in bed. What a ruthless ancestor. He was so ruthless to his own granddaughter, and he still had the nerve to say that he didn't treat them as outsiders. "I'm so sorry." She would not believe a single word that the elder ancestor said. When Old Madam's slap landed, Yiqing Luo's body was like lightning, as she speedily retreated a few steps. Her heel pressed against the fruit and incense burner on the table. Old Madam's slap indeed used up all the strength in her body, but the slap landed on empty air. Because of inertia, how could the old man stand firmly? His body bent forward, and his whole body leaned forward. "Old Madam!" Lady Biming was so scared that her face turned pale. At this moment, she couldn't be bothered about whether she had the right to enter the ancestral hall, as her figure flashed and speedily rushed into the ancestral hall, barely catching Old Madam. Chapter 736. On the contrary, Yiqing Luo stood calmly by the side of the table, looking at the both of them expressionlessly. Old Grandmadam's old face turned pale as her body trembled. Since when had she suffered such humiliation? A junior actually made her lose all her face. If she really fell to the ground because she had hit Yiqing Luo's palm, her Yi family's old Grandmadam's face would be completely ruined. Vile spawn! Vile spawn! After old Grandmadam regained her senses, she pointed at Yiqing Luo and berated her. Biming sure supported old Grandmadam and comforted her gently. "Old Grandmadam, don't be angry. Don't harm your health. Seventh Miss is after all still a child." She was upset because she saw Madame Ye's memorial tablet. "Please don't be calculative with 7th Mississippi." Her voice was extremely gentle and could calm one's heart. Saying that, Biming sure shot a sideways glance at Yiqing Luo, hinting her not to be angry with old Grandmadam. Towards this Biming sure, Yiqing Luo was still unable to see through her. It seemed that this was the only lady in Three Springs sect who wholeheartedly thought for the Yi family. Biming sure's concern towards old Grandmadam didn't seem fake. Biming sure helped her to explain for the matter earlier and calmed her temper, which seemed to be sincere. If all these were just acting, Yiqing Luo had to admire Biming sure's superb acting skills. Now that she owed Biming sure a favor, she naturally wouldn't reject her face. She immediately kept her arrogance. "Today I didn't think it through and entered the ancestral hall without permission. But I still hope old Grandmadam will consider my suggestion earlier." Saying that, she turned around and left the ancestral hall. This was considered as giving them a way out. Under Biming sure's gentle, soothing words, old Grandmadam's expression finally calmed down. "Old Grandmadam, look, 7th Miss has been thinking about her mother's memorial tablet. Aren't you trying to please her? Why not let this memorial tablet be worshipped to 7th Mississippi? In this way, 7th Miss will be happy and will be grateful to you, isn't it? Old Grand Madam's expression sunk when she heard Biming Clan saying that she wanted to please Yi Ching Luo in front of everyone. But looking at the serious look on Lady Biming's face, it was clear that she was sincerely trying to help him out. He could only suppress his anger. We'll talk about this later. Help me to the study. I'll write a letter to Wild Heaven. After Yi Ching Luo came out of the ancestral hall, she went to Zi Ling to check on the situation. After taking the bone-healing pill and going through Yi Ching Luo's unique acupuncture technique, Zi Ling clearly felt that her legs were gradually recovering, because the leg that had been crippled for 10 years had actually regained feeling. Even if it was painful and itchy, as if ants were devouring her bones, Zi Ling was still ecstatic. As long as she could feel it, it meant that her originally crippled leg could be saved. Hong Mei was by his side, holding a bowl of boiled medicinal soup. Hong Mei would not neglect Zi Ling just because she was a maidservant. Hong Mei had brewed this bowl of medicine according to Yi Ching Luo's instructions, without a single mistake. Yi Ching Luo was reassured as she instructed Zi Ling and passed tomorrow's dosage to Hong Mei before leaving Zi Ling's room. Tomorrow, she still had to meet up with the World Group's youngsters. Then she would return to Three Springs Sect to perform acupuncture on Zi Ling tonight. Yi Ching Luo returned to the bedroom, and before she could walk to the bedside, an arm suddenly wrapped around her waist from behind. Following that, a sandalwood scent assaulted her nostrils. "Why are you here?" Yi Ching Luo wasn't shocked as her body softly snuggled into his arms the moment the man wrapped around her. DMO Xian rubbed against her neck as his warm breath sprayed onto her skin. Chapter 737. You asked Feng to investigate the Biming clan. How could I not come? DMO Xian couldn't help but plant a kiss on her neck as his long arm suddenly exerted strength, turning the woman's soft body to face him. Yi Ching Luo pursed her pink lips and scoffed lightly. That brat off Feng. He informed you of everything. Does he have to tell you even if I go to the toilet a few times? DMO Xian's glimmering peach blossom eyes curved into a demonic charm. When I'm not around, I want to know everything about you. Then, he lowered his head and whispered in her ear, as for how many times you went to the toilet, I hope you can tell me yourself. You holy shit. Die. Change. Pervert. She admitted defeat. DMO Xian's gaze became even more indulgent as he looked at the angry face of the woman he loved. He held Yi Ching Luo's little hand tightly and pressed it into his embrace as he gave a low laugh. The North Ming family's people are all very intelligent. Compared to power and influence, they would prefer a peaceful life. You're here just to tell me the results of your investigation personally? Yi Ching Luo raised her brows as her chin rested on his chest and looked up at him. DMO Xian's dark eyes were deep and serene as he gazed deeply into her eyes, finally falling onto her tender lips. After meeting his gaze, Yi Ching Luo seemed to have realized something as her cheeks flushed red. She hammered his chest with her fist and buried her head in his arms. What are you looking at? Look at you. His clear and bright voice was as mellow as fine wine, intoxicating her heart. His gaze was extremely serious, as though he wanted to trap Yi Ching Luo into his own flesh and blood. At this moment, it was not only his cheeks that were burning hot. Even her body was burning like a raging fire. Little Luo, DMO Xian's gaze was gentle and his voice was extremely low. He gently propped up Yi Ching Luo's little face as his eyes congealed on her blushing face. Such a Lil Luoer was even more tempting. Yi Ching Luo's little heart was thumping wildly. She could clearly see the seriousness in the man's eyes. She could clearly see the flames in his eyes. Yi Ching Luo's fair little hands caressed his cheeks. This was a face she was familiar with. It was not the fake face of Supreme MO. Her hands cupped DMO Xian's face as she tiptoed and kissed his lips. How could DMO Xian miss the initiative of his beloved woman? His slender fingers clasped the back of her head, and the arm around her waist tightened deepening the kiss. His kiss was forceful and domineering. Yiqing Luo merely took some time before she sank into oblivion and went limp in his arms. DMO Xian only released her swollen lips when both of them were panting heavily, as he closed his eyes in satisfaction. Yiqing Luo's face and ears were flushed red as she laid on his chest, panting heavily, when she heard the man's husky magnetic voice resounding by the side of her ear. Lil Luo, being so proactive, is it because of the excitement from the academy, which made you feel guilty towards me? Yiqing Luo raised her eyes and stared at him angrily as she raised her fist and hammered down heavily. DMO Xian held her fist and placed it on his chest as he laughed heartily. His chest kept on moving up and down, and that strong and powerful heartbeat from her palm made Yiqing Luo's palm gradually turn hot. Yiqing Luo was extremely embarrassed. Vile man, her skills were indeed too shallow. Every time she was in front of this man, she was the only one whose face was flushed red. On what basis did she have to be teased by him till she had no words to refute? She was obviously the real veteran. Yiqing Luo opened her mouth as she harshly bit on his shoulder. Chapter 738. The bronze mirror on the table in front coincidentally reflected Yiqing Luo's current expression. DMO Xian glanced sideways and could see the lady's flushed cheeks and angry eyes from the bronze mirror. Extremely cute. She was so adorable that ripples appeared in his heart. In this world, only he could enjoy Yiqing Luo's cuteness alone. The warmth in DMO Xian's peach blossom eyes became more intense. He held the woman in his arms tightly. Unable to restrain himself, he lifted her chin, wanting to ask for another deep kiss, but was pushed away by the lady shyly. Yiqing Luo was like a cat as she jumped onto the bed and pulled down the veil. Tomorrow I still have to go to the Mercenary Association to take on a mission. I need to rest early. I won't send you off. Unbeknownst to him, the lady's delicate figure was faintly discernible in the white veil. This was a challenge to DMO Xian's self-control. DMO Xian's black eyes were like a whirlpool, lingering in the bottom of his eyes. His body gradually moved closer to the bed. Yiqing Luo's body tensed up. Either you return to the academy or the mansion. She had never experienced love affairs before, but she knew what the flame in DMO Xian's eyes meant. Although she was a new generation woman in the 21st century, it didn't mean that she could let DMO Xian have sex before she got married. DMO Xian seemed as though he didn't hear anything as he walked to the bed and lifted the veil. His narrow peach blossom eyes smiled at the stiff lady on the bed. It's not the first time we share a bed. Lil Luo should be used to it. During those days in the academy, DMO Xian would sneak in her bedroom every night and hug her to sleep. Indeed, it wasn't the first time. But the situation now was obviously different. This was the Three Springs sect, not the academy. If DMO Xian didn't control himself, wouldn't she be a sheep walking into the wolf's mouth? Lil Luo is afraid of me. DMO Xian's knees were already kneeling on the bed as he leaned forward. That peerless, handsome face was magnified in Yiqing Luo's eyes. Yiqing Luo's breathing suddenly stopped as her heart seemed to jump to her throat. I'm afraid of you. Before she could finish her words, in the next second, her body felt light as she and DMO Xian both fell onto the bed. DMO Xian's long arm hooked around her slender waist, pulling her into his embrace as one long slender leg laid across Yiqing Luo. The man's scorching temperature and those hard muscles made Yiqing Luo's body tense up. DMO Xian's large palm covered her head, her soft hair rubbing against his palm. He chuckled and hugged her body tightly. Silly girl, go to sleep. Yiqing Luo's eyes widened. Sleep? DMO Xian asked her to sleep. Didn't he want to? If you still don't close your eyes, I will really start to act according to the image in your mind. DMO Xian's low and hoarse voice sounded even more magnetic. Yiqing Luo's face was as red as a tomato. She opened her mouth and fiercely bit down on DMO Xian's shoulder, spurning this vile man, full of filth. Yiqing Luo did not bite lightly. DMO Xian's brows didn't even crease. Stop fooling around. I have to make a trip back to the Imperial Palace tomorrow. I might not be able to accompany you for the next 3 days of holiday. A low and hoarse magnetic man's voice was filled with pampering as it lingered by the side of her ear, like a feather that tickled one's heart. Yiqing Luo was stunned as she loosened her bite and raised her head to look at him. Go to the Imperial Palace. Something happened in the Imperial Palace. I'll be back 3 days later. DMO Xian rubbed her head. Yiqing Luo's original excited mood suddenly dissipated. She buried her head into DMO Xian's embrace. Is it something serious? Chapter 739. Yiqing Luo responded gloomily. She couldn't hide the disappointment in her heart. Suddenly, she recalled that when she first met DMO Xian, he had left the sublime, profound heart jade in her body due to urgent matters in the Imperial Palace and left Win to guard her side before he left in a hurry. In fact, during that period in the academy, Yiqing Luo had seen DMO Xian receiving secret letters from the Imperial Palace several times. Every time, DMO Xian's peerless face would be covered with a layer of haze. She had always thought that DMO Xian would accompany her, unconditionally satisfying all her requests, unconditionally treating the brothers whom she cared about as his own people, which made her almost forget about it. This man was not only her man, and it was the Supreme Dizun, Nirvana Realm's first palace, the Imperial Palace Lord. The higher one's ability was, the greater the responsibility. It's really just a few small matters. After we meet in the academy, I'll strip naked for you to check, all right? Sensing the disappointment in the woman's tone, DMO Xian hugged her tightly, trying to lighten the atmosphere. Yiqing Luo didn't act like usual, punching him when she heard his dirty teasing. She still buried her head in his chest, biting her pink lips. DMO Xian sighed softly as he lifted the woman's petite body and shifted upwards, exchanging glances with her. His slender fingers caressed Yiqing Luo's pink lips, gently caressing. If you can't bear to leave me, I won't go. The woman's fair little hand suddenly stretched out, holding the big hand on her lips. It's not that I don't want you to go. Yiqing Luo lowered her eyes. Her curly long lashes were thick, but was unable to conceal the disappointment in her eyes. She automatically circled his neck. I just feel that no matter what happens to me, you will accompany me and give me help. But I am unable to accompany you, to give you any help. Her ability was not enough. Far from enough. If she was a little stronger, she would have enough qualifications to stand beside DMO Xian. No matter what happened in the Imperial Palace, she would be able to stand beside DMO Xian to help him solve his problems, instead of waiting foolishly for DMO Xian to return. In this case, it was so sweet and warm that DMO Xian's heart almost melted. You being by my side now is the greatest help to me. DMO Xian couldn't help himself as he lifted Yiqing Luo's chin and kissed her all over her face. Yiqing Luo's petite body trembled as she gradually softened her body, accepting his kiss. He murmured, but I want the people around you to truly acknowledge me. Her brother had completely acknowledged DMO Xian's existence. But on DMO Xian's side, even if it was on account of DMO Xian's face, they would not show any resistance towards her. But in their hearts, they would never submit to her. DMO Xian was too outstanding. It could be said that DMO Xian was a myth and legend in too many people's hearts. DMO Xian was the god they revered. There was no woman in this world who was qualified to stand beside DMO Xian. If she wanted to be with DMO Xian, she must possess the same level of strength as him. What she wanted was the Imperial Palace's people, DMO Xian's people, to genuinely acknowledge her, to be able to stand beside DMO Xian. The woman I fancy, will definitely be peerless and unparalleled. DMO Xian kissed between her brows, as the depth of his eyes was as deep as the abyss. His gaze turned gentler and gentler, as though his entire face was soaked in honey, so sweet that it was sickeningly sweet. This was his Lil Luo, the woman he fancied. It was because he knew Yi-Ching Luo's character that until now, he still hadn't brought her to the Imperial Palace. Chapter 740. The next day, when Yi-Ching Luo woke up, DMO Xian was no longer by her side. She sighed softly, her expression becoming firm and dignified. The her now. Not only was it for herself to become stronger, she was also fighting for DMO Xian. She wanted to use the fastest speed to reach the peak. Yi-Ching Luo clenched her fists as she got up from the bed and speedily washed up. Before leaving, Yi-Ching Luo went to check on Ziling's condition. After ascertaining that there weren't any other influences, Yi-Ching Luo left the courtyard and headed straight towards the huge mansion which the youngsters from the World Group had agreed on. Yi-Ching Luo didn't know that not too long after she left, old Grandmadam came to Yi-Ching Luo's courtyard with the support of Baiming clan. In Bei Mingshir's hands, there was still Yi-Ching Luo's mother's name engraved on the ranking. After leaving the ancestral hall yesterday, under the comforting words of the Baiming clan, the great ancestor had regained his senses. Today he borrowed Yi-Ching Luo's request yesterday to take that slut's tablet and send it to her courtyard. Who knew that when they arrived at the courtyard, they were informed by Hong Mei that Yi-Ching Luo had left Three Springs sect early in the morning. The elder ancestor's face turned as black as charcoal on the spot, his face ashen. However, he had already taken the tablet, so there was no reason for him to return it. Lady Baiming gave the tablet to Hong Mei, then helped the old ancestor leave. After Yi-Ching Luo stepped into the mansion, she immediately felt that she had walked into the wrong place. The exterior of the old house was still nostalgic and ancient, but she remembered that the interior design of the old house was very simple and elegant, without losing its grandeur. Why had it become like this now? Why did it look like the old house of a nouveau riche? Who could tell her what the hell was going on? The huge garden was no longer filled with flowers, and the lush trees were also gone. Instead, there was a fake mountain made of gold and a pond with clear water flowing around it. On both sides of the pond, there were two golden lion sculptures. The lion's eyes were inlaid with luminous pearls and looked especially dazzling. Yi-Ching Luo was completely dumbfounded. She was not the only one who was confused. The dozen or so youths who had arrived earlier were also dumbfounded. After they entered the old house, they began to wonder if they had come to the wrong place. But even if they went to the wrong place, it was impossible for more than 10 people to go to the wrong place at the same time. Go, let's go in and take a look. Yi-Ching Luo frowned. This kind of decor and design was completely unlike Yin Xiaoyi's style. Moreover, it was impossible to build the fake mountain, pond, and two golden lions in a short period of time. Yin Xiaoyi, who had been staying with them in the academy for the past month, did not have the time to make such a large construction. This old residence was purchased by Yin Xiaoyi. After becoming the World Group's gathering place, it was even more impossible for Yin Xiaoyi to sell this old mansion. There was only one possibility. This old house had been forcibly taken away. Was it the Yuchi family who deliberately invaded their territory when they were in the Heavenly Academy? When they crossed the garden and arrived at the courtyard where they were training, they were even more dumbfounded. The ground of the huge courtyard had been rebuilt. It was exactly like the floor of a training ground. Around the courtyard, there were 10 weapon racks with all kinds of weapons placed on them. In the middle of the training ground, there were a total of 20 over men dressed in the World Group uniform currently training. Seeing someone coming over, those men stopped their training and turned their heads in unison. Yi-Ching Luo was rather familiar with these faces. Chapter 741. 10 over youngsters also recognized them as their eyes opened wide, as though they couldn't believe that they would actually appear here. If it wasn't for the fact that they were wearing their own uniform, they would have thought that their mansion had been forcefully occupied by the Blue Dragon mercenary group. Yi-Ching Luo's expression was extremely indifferent, as though she had long expected that they would come over. She only used a sharp gaze to sweep past those 20 over men, as though she was confirming their numbers. The leader of the group, Zhao Bo, took a step forward as he looked respectfully at Yi Qing Luo. "Miss Yi, we have a total of 24 brothers, and we're here to seek shelter from the World Mercenary Group. We hope that Miss Yi will take us in." His tone was neither servile nor overbearing. He didn't seem to feel that it was embarrassing to lower their heads to this young lady, who was just a 15-year-old young lady. They only believed in those who had the ability. Yi Qing Luo had enough qualifications to make them believe in her. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled into a smile as she slowly nodded. "Welcome to your audition. Congratulations on making the best choice." Zhao Bo's expression was neither happy nor angry as he cupped his fists. "I hope so." Seeking shelter from the World Group was their current only choice. Of course, it was also because the mercenary group allowed them to see hope. It allowed them to see the dream of joining the mercenary group back then. The World Group's unity, their tacit understanding, and that kind of brotherhood which disregarded everything for their brothers, had infected them. Since Zhao Bo had brought his brothers over, naturally he hoped that this would be the last mercenary group they would stay in, an eternal mercenary group. Yi Qing Luo smiled as her gaze surveyed the surroundings of the training grounds as her brows rose. "This place is yours." "No." Zhao Bo shook his head. "It was built by Thief Butler. He said that you instructed him before you left." "Thief Butler? What the hell? When did she instruct him to do these things?" Her taste in beauty wasn't so deranged to such a stage. "Wait a minute. Thief." Yi Qing Luo's brows twitched as her lips twitched a few times as her eyes turned extremely vicious. Her pink lips moved, and every single cold word came out of her mouth. "Thief! Saint! Come out right now." Not long after, an old man dressed in silk and brocade leisurely walked out from the inner courtyard. "Little girl, this old man is not deaf. There is no need to shout so loudly." After seeing god thieves dressing clearly, Yi Qing Luo almost spat out a mouthful of blood. The navy blue robe was embroidered with large gold ingots. That's right, just one, two. There were also 3 jadeite stones of different colors hanging on his waist. Her messy hair was casually tied into a bun. He wore a purple gold jade crown, which was also inlaid with a few shining agate stones. This was the typical attire of a nouveau riche. Damn it. So, this was holy pirate style? This was the first time the dozen or so youths behind him had seen someone dressed like this. They couldn't help but burst into laughter. Yi Qing Luo's lips twitched as she resisted the urge to give God Thief a good beating. Taking a deep breath, she turned her head and looked at the 10 over youngsters behind her. "You guys stay here for your morning exercise first. I'll have a private chat with God Thief." The last 4 words were said through clenched teeth. Following that, she walked towards God Thief in big strides. Stretching out her hand, she grabbed God Thief's skinny shoulder and dragged him into the inner courtyard without any explanation. From afar, she could still hear God Thief's loud and clear voice. The 10 over youngsters who remained in the courtyard rubbed their arms. "Do you feel that? Boss's gaze is very scary." Chapter 742. A young lady's uncontrollable howl was heard coming from the inner courtyard's main hall. "Stinky old man, when I returned to the academy, didn't you pat your chest and promise me that you would help me take care of the old mansion while I'm not around?" Yi Qing Luo's hands pressed down on God Thief's shoulders as she forcefully pressed him onto the chair. Her exquisite face was filled with anger. God Thief put on an innocent look. "Haven't I been taking good care of your old mansion? Take up my ass." Yi Qing Luo tugged his lapel as she rubbed his messy hair, as those few resplendent agate stones kept on shaking. "What kind of clothes are you wearing? Are you afraid that others don't know that you like gold ingots? And this hairpin, this jade pendant. And who allowed you to change the garden into that look? Who allowed you to touch this courtyard? And this main hall of mine, what kind of look did you call it?" Without a doubt, the entire old mansion's decorations had not escaped from God Thief's evil hands. Take a look at this main hall. The pillars had already been painted with a layer of gold lacquer. All the mahogany and white wood tables and chairs had been changed into golden, shiny furniture. The tea set on top of every golden table was also made of gold. Had it fallen into the gold vault? God Thief pushed Yi Qing Luo's hand away as he retorted in a serious manner. I've spent so many gold coins for your own good. Look at how noble and majestic this mansion of ours looks. Noble your head, majestic your head. Yi Qing Luo really wanted to throw up blood. As the World Group's butler, I represent the World Group's image, so naturally I have to dress up properly. Don't you feel that my dressing up in this way makes the World Group look high-end and not lacking in money? Yi Qing Luo only felt that. This made the World Group look like a silly group. At least that was what she felt. Of course, the garden needs to be decorated with a golden mountain instead of a pond. This is an auspicious sign. Young lady, I'm telling you, don't doubt the elderly's words. If you don't listen to the elderly's words, you'll be at a disadvantage right in front of you. I'm telling you. If the guests came to the World Group's gathering place and saw those wildflowers and weeds in the garden, wouldn't it lower your status? Towards God Thief's serious look of nonsense, Yi Qing Luo was completely speechless. As for that courtyard of yours, since it's for the mercenaries to train, it should be more professional. It will also be of great help to the future development of mercenaries. The hall is even more important. The hall represents the owner's aesthetics, grandeur, as well as wealth, etc. I'm doing this for the World Group. Yi Qing Luo really wanted to stuff God Thief's mouth. After calming herself down, Yi Qing Luo's lips curled into a fake smile. So, where did your gold coins come from? Holy Pirate had been locked up in Death God Castle for 10 years and had only been out for a month. How could he have so many coins? One had to know that it would cost at least tens of thousands of gold coins to remodel the garden, the training ground, and all the facilities in the old house. It was enough to buy an entire city. Did you hide money in the past? God Thief met with Yi Qing Luo's interrogative gaze as he delightfully raised his chin. Don't forget my identity. Holy Thief. He was famous for stealing in the Nirvana realm. As long as he, Holy Thief, took action, there was nothing that he couldn't steal. 10 years ago, he was also known as Nirvana realm's legend and legend. Which family did you steal from? Steal? To be able to steal so many gold coins? Holy Thief rubbed his nose. I made a trip to the Yuchi family's warehouse and conveniently made a trip to the palace. Yuchi family? Palace? All right, there could be that. Chapter 743. Last month, the World Group's youngsters had tasted the wonderful taste of training. This time round's training, all of them were extremely enthusiastic. By the time Yi Qing Luo and God Thief came out from the main hall and returned to the courtyard, now it should be called as the training grounds. All the youngsters were dressed in the mercenary group's uniform and were having a one-on-one competition with Zhao Bo and the others. Where's the overlord? Seeing that DMO Xin wasn't following behind Yi Qing Luo, Xiao Jin, who was standing outside the crowd, asked curiously. He has something to settle. Yi Qing Luo explained simply. Her vision went past the surrounding crowd and fell onto Baiming Liancheng and Zhao Bo, who were in the midst of battle. They didn't use any profound qi, and it was totally a physical fight. Apparently, Zhao Bo's skills were on a higher level. After all, Zhao Bo was an old mercenary and had completed no less than 500 missions. Baiming Liancheng was just a tender little newbie, so naturally he wasn't a match for Zhao Bo, who had been on the battlefield for a long time. This battle didn't last for too long. Baiming Liancheng was defeated. The surrounding students cheered and applauded as they started to ask Zhao Bo for advice on battle tactics. This was how the men, the mercenary group, got along. No discord, no concord. The more they fought, the deeper their relationship. But in just 1 hour, these two groups of people's relationship had already melded together. Just at this moment, an astonished cry was heard from outside the training grounds. Why has this place changed? Have I walked to the wrong place? It was Yi Fengyu's voice. In order to nurture Yi Fengyu's self-awareness, Yi Qing Luo specially didn't wait for him to meet up and reported to the old residents together. She had not expected him to arrive so late. Yi Qing Luo went up and was just about to reprimand Yi Fengyu when she saw two slender figures following beside Yi Fengyu. Brother Z Fan, Brother Z Fei. Let me first confirm, I seem to have really walked to the wrong place. Sister. Yi Fengyu explained awkwardly, but when he saw Yi Qing Luo walking towards him, he heaved a sigh of relief. He took a look at the two people behind him and immediately walked towards Yi Qing Luo as he asked softly, Sister, what's going on here? Why has the garden changed so much? Yi Qing Luo walked past his tall figure and faintly saw the corner of the Mu brothers' clothes. Why are they here? Qing Luo. Mu Zifan was already walking toward her. He waved the folding fan in his hand, his eyes brimming with joy. Brother, you specifically came to the pristine elixir medicine store to tell me that you've already agreed to the alchemist competition held by the Alchemy Guild. Yi Qing Luo nodded. I'm just a dabbler alchemist who is half a step into the alchemy profession, so I'm sure I'll be able to learn a lot during the alchemist competition. Getting Yi Qing Luo's exact answer, the expression on Mu Zifan's face became even more delighted. I heard from Brother Yu that you have established a mercenary group. If possible, let Zifei join your mercenary group. How about it? This is the world group's honor. Yi Qing Luo naturally wouldn't reject such a strong assistant. As for me, I'm afraid. Mu Zifan pursed his lips hesitantly. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled into an understanding smile. I understand. An ordinary alchemist from the Alchemy Union could join a mercenary group or an adventurer group as long as they had the permission of the union's leader. But Mu Zifan's identity was different. He was the Alchemy Union's young chief, and also the future Alchemy Union's chief. If he personally joined a certain powerhouse, it would be equivalent to the entire Alchemy Union joining that powerhouse. This kind of matter was something that the Alchemy Union and other powerhouses would absolutely not allow to happen. Chapter 744. Long Yunjian separated 25 mercenary group member badges from the group leader badges and distributed them to Mu Zifei, Zhao Bo, and the others. Seeing Mu Zifei change into the world group's uniform and wear the member badge, Mu Zifan nodded his head in gratification. The few of them exchanged a few more conventional greetings before Mu Zifan said that the Alchemist Guild still had urgent matters that required his attention. Thus, he left Mu Zifei in the world group and left. Seeing the youngsters surrounding Zhao Bo, Mu Zifei, and the others, chattering nonstop, Yi Qing Luo's eyes were filled with smiles. She raised her hand and shouted, Brothers, are you ready? Let's go to the mercenary union now. The mercenaries replied excitedly, Let's go. The group left the mansion in a grandiose manner, heading towards the direction of the mercenary union. The front was led by Qiao Jin and Yin Xiao, while Yi Qing Luo, Long Yunjian, and Mo Yuing walked at the back of the group. Yi Qing Luo walked beside Long Yunjian as her charming eyes carefully sized up those mercenaries who were still maintaining their excitement. Second group suggestion. What do you think? Long Yunjian glanced sideways slightly as he expressionlessly looked at Yi Qing Luo for a moment, as he spoke out calmly. Zhao Bo and the rest have 11 people who are Celestial Phoenix Academy students. If they're arranged into the second group, that would mean that after deducting the holidays, there's only 13 people left in the group. 13 people. It was indeed too little. However, we can discuss this matter with Zhao Bo and the rest first. The world group will definitely gather reliable, fresh blood in the future, and setting up a second group is not a bad choice. Long Yunjian saw that she was deep in thought and suggested another method. After all, the world group had only been established for a month. Even though they were promoted to a bronze plate mercenary group on the second day, they were still at a disadvantage in terms of numbers. Most importantly, their team was a little special, so they couldn't recruit new members as they pleased like other mercenary teams. After Zhao Bo has completely settled down in the world group, I will hand over the management of the second group to Zhao Bo. The recruitment of new members can also be handed over to him. Mo Yuing, who had been silent all this while, tilted her head and spoke with an extremely rigid tone and speed. Yi Qing Luo's eyes lit up as she applauded. This idea isn't bad. Handing over everything to them to manage also represents our trust in him. There were more than 90 people in this group. Although there were many people, their steps were neat and orderly, and they walked quite quickly. Not long after, the group passed by the marketplace. Standing in the middle of the marketplace, Xiao Jin and Yin Xiao halted. Yiqing Luo's mood suddenly became heavier by quite a bit. The place that had been bathed in blood last month had already regained its original liveliness. All the merchants had been replaced. The merchants continued to sell, and the adventurers continued to buy. Nothing had changed. It was as if the bloodbath in the marketplace did not exist at all. However, the few of them knew very well that that cruel memory was deeply imprinted in their minds and could never be erased. The tea house had been replaced by a newly built auction house. Opposite the tea house, there was no longer the stall owner who had painted the most beautiful scene in the world for them. No one mentioned the scene of the massacre, and no one cared about the innocent people who had died. A trace of loneliness and reluctance flashed across their eyes. Long Yunjian placed his hand on Yiqing Luo's shoulder from behind, as his cold voice was filled with a strong sense of determination. After we become stronger, we will take revenge for those innocent people who once existed here. He would definitely take revenge for this. Chapter 745. More than 90 people, all standing on the street of the marketplace, were naturally eye-catching. For some reason, there were many mercenary groups passing through the market early in the morning. A mercenary group consisted of dozens or hundreds of people. The incomparably spacious marketplace became much more crowded. Yiqing Luo and the others stopped in their tracks as they looked towards the direction of the tea house. Suddenly, he heard a cry of pain, and soon after, a man's rude voice could be heard. "Kid, are you blind? Do you know who we are? How dare you block the way here?" Soon after, a young man was pushed to the ground and fell on his butt. The man who pushed the young man laughed proudly. A kid who doesn't even have the strength to truss a chicken is worthy of being a mercenary? I'm laughing my head off, ha. As he laughed, the group of followers behind him also laughed loudly. The youths bent down to help the young man up. Their expressions were extremely ugly. "You guys were the ones who crashed into us. And if I say it was you guys who hit it, then it was you guys." The man raised his voice and took a step forward with a ferocious look in his eyes. He reached out to push the young man who had just retorted. "Little brat, you're still drinking milk at home when you haven't even grown your hair. Now that you've bumped into me, I'll break your legs if you don't *King give me some money to pay the doctor." Hearing the man's vile words, the youths furrowed their brows. When they saw the outstretched hand, they quickly took a step back and looked at Long Yunjian. They remembered what Yiqing Luo had once said. Outside of the academy, they were not allowed to make any moves. They had to listen to the leader's arrangements. "You actually dare to dodge?" The man pushed the air and was immediately unable to restrain his anger. The muscles on his face kept trembling. With a wave of his arm, dozens of people dressed in the same uniform surrounded the world group. "Today, if you brats don't kneel down and hand over the coins to me, none of you will be able to leave." Yiqing Luo half narrowed her eyes as she sized up these people. Judging from their attire, temperament, and tone, they should be a small mercenary group that specialized in doing despicable things. He didn't know what day it was today. Why were there so many mercenary groups gathered at the market? Even such a mercenary group was mixed in. They were trying to blackmail her. Yiqing Luo crossed her arms as she walked past those youngsters and slowly walked towards that man. When the youngsters saw Yiqing Luo appearing, they all opened up a path. When that man saw Yiqing Ho, his eyes immediately emitted a wolfish glint. You're the boss of this bunch of brats?" Yiqing Luo's lips curled up slightly. Her long and narrow eyes were flowing with ripples. The more the man looked, the more his heart itched. He couldn't wait to take this little girl home and cherish her. He rubbed his hands together, and the muscles on his face trembled. "Little beauty, I don't want the money anymore. Come home with me." Saying that, he gave a sinister smile as he stretched out his hand towards Yiqing Luo. But the man's hand had just stretched out, and before he could even touch Yiqing Luo, The petite figure in front of him seemed to have disappeared into thin air. He touched nothing. The man was in disbelief as his hand started to flail about on the spot where Yi-Ching Luo had stood previously. There was nothing but air. His eyes widened, and just as he was about to burst into a rage and scold these little brats, a burning pain suddenly came from his entire face. Following that, he felt his nose turning sore as some liquid started to flow out. Immediately following that, pain was felt from his oral cavity. A puff sound was heard as a mouthful of blood started to gush out, along with several yellowed teeth. Chapter 746. The man scanned the surroundings with a fiendish look. His gaze, however, was fixed on the young girl beside him, who was looking at him with a smile. The young lady's long and narrow eyes, although enchanting, but on a closer look, it revealed a frosty coldness. Her smile became more and more alluring, and the chilling feeling grew even stronger. See, don't you want to lose your teeth? I'll satisfy you. No need to thank me. Yi-Ching Luo's sweet voice was clear and pleasant to listen to. Following that, she took a step forward. An invisible majestic aura was released, causing those men's aura to be crushed into nothing. That arrogant man retreated a few steps. This scene, in the eyes of outsiders, was indeed a joke. A tall man with a height of 9 meters, with bulging muscles. A petite young lady who had just reached the man's chest. Her looks were peerless and tender, with a young lady's sweet smile. But that young lady forced the 9 meters tall man to retreat step by step. Next, where is it? Yi-Ching Luo blinked her eyes in a daze as she turned her head to look at those youngsters who were pushed away earlier. Legs. Legs. The youngsters were extremely cooperative. Yi-Ching Luo nodded her head in enlightenment. Right, break his legs. Saying that, she put on a sweet smile as she looked at the man. Then, what about his legs? The man's face turned pale. This young lass, whose hair hadn't even grown fully, dared to humiliate him in this way? How could the man not see the ridicule in the eyes of those people who were watching the show around them? Zhao Zhao was just a young lass. He could beat her into a meat patty with just one punch. How could he possibly have any fear towards this young lass? The man's pride and arrogance couldn't believe that he would be afraid of a young lass. He clenched his fists tightly as his peripheral vision shot a glance at the bunch of brothers behind him. Go, capture this wretched lass back alive for me. The few of us brothers haven't tasted meat for a long time. A young lady who was as pretty as a flower. One look and one knew that she was a virgin. Those vicious-looking men, when they heard that, their eyes started to emit a wolf's light. All of them were like wolves and tigers, as they pounced towards Yi-Ching Luo's direction. While the adventurers and stall owners were watching the show, a deafening roar suddenly came from afar. You dare to cause trouble in the marketplace? Capture all of them. As soon as he finished speaking, more than a dozen people wearing dark armor and holding silver spears charged over. When they saw those people, the onlookers acted as if they had rehearsed this beforehand. They swarmed away and pretended not to see anything. These were the guards of the marketplace. If they encountered unscrupulous merchants or adventurers, the guards had the right to throw them out of the market and terminate their right to enter the market. Because of this, the people in the marketplace were extremely respectful towards the guards. Behind the dozen guards, a middle-aged man in a dark robe slowly walked over. The man had a rat's head and a rat's brain. One look, and you could tell that he was not a good person. He had his hands behind his back and was probably the leader of these guards. Lord Law Enforcer, Lord Law Enforcer. The fiendish man suddenly became as docile as a lamb, covering his mouth and nose. That leaky accent sounded extremely interesting. The man who was addressed as Lord Law Enforcer frowned, as he gave that man a disgusted look. Big Bear, get lost. Don't discuss this, Lord Law Enforcer. Big Bear immediately retreated a few steps as he bawled and complained. Lord Law Enforcer, you have to seek justice for me. I am a first-rate good citizen. This young lass led a bunch of kids here to cause trouble. I couldn't even persuade them, and was even beaten up. Yi-Ching Luo and the crowd. Chapter 747. The law enforcer squinted his sinister eyes as he coldly swept a glance at Yiqing Luo and the others. Capture them and bring them to the law enforcement dungeon. Very quickly, another group of armored guards rushed over. Without any explanation, they went up to capture them. The World Group's youngsters were infuriated. This man called Brother Xiong actually twisted the truth. Kitty Lee was originally ignorant of worldly affairs, so how could she stand others slandering her own brothers? Her petite figure suddenly dashed to the front of the crowd as her spirited, beautiful eyes widened. He's spouting rubbish. It's obvious that he saw us as young, so he intentionally extorted our money. The surrounding people can all be witnesses. Kitty Lee pointed to those merchants and adventurers who had dispersed but had their ears pricked up as they paid close attention to this side. The minute they saw a youngster pointing at them, these merchants and adventurers immediately put on an unconcerned look. We don't know anything. What extortion? We didn't see anything. I'm just a passerby. After hanging around this street for a long time, everyone knew the way to survive. Meddling in other people's business would easily implicate them, especially for this bunch of rogue mercenary groups who often hung around in the marketplace, doing all sorts of shady deals. If it wasn't for the fact that they had the support of the law enforcer, how could they be so arrogant? These people didn't want to implicate themselves for a bunch of kids whom they didn't even know. No matter if it was the merchants or adventurers, they all put on an unconcerned look. You all. Kitty Lee's face flushed red from anger. Father was right. Humans were all not good things, other than her sister and brothers. Kitty. Yiqing Luo patted Kitty Lee's shoulder lightly as she shook her head at her. You're a human, so don't try to reason with a dog. After all, humans and dogs speak different languages. Yiqing Luo's voice was sweet and melodious. His tone was serious, as if he was talking about a great principle of life. Who are you calling a dog? The man shouted furiously. Who should be talking about who? Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes as her smile was sweet and harmless. The law enforcer's expression sunk. Yiqing Luo had apparently scolded him as well. When Big Bear saw Lord Law Enforcer's unfriendly expression, he had nothing to fear with Lord Law Enforcer backing him up. Immediately, he raised his fist, and with a vicious glint in his eyes, he threw a punch towards Yiqing Luo's direction. Wretched lass, I'll discipline you on behalf of your parents. You're just a cheap girl who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Yiqing Luo's wrist flipped, and her fair little hand firmly clasped onto his incoming fist. That small hand was probably no bigger than half of the bear's fist, but only Big Xiong alone could clearly feel that powerful force. He didn't even have the strength to struggle free. Lord Enforcer. Big Bear's face contorted in pain. Yiqing Luo's 5 fingers tightened one by one. Big Bear could clearly hear the bones in his 5 fingers shattering. The pain of that bone shattering was so excruciating that he wished he was dead. Just as Brother Xiong was about to faint from the pain, Yiqing Luo released his hand. Big Bear's whole body went limp on the ground. He hugged his hand and rolled on the ground in pain. The law enforcer's expression was extremely gloomy as a chilly glint shot out from his eyes. The surrounding crowd sighed helplessly as they shook their heads. These young men and young ladies were indeed a bunch of young and arrogant ladies who didn't know the ways of the world. Young masters. Lord Law Enforcer obviously wanted to protect Big Bear and the others, but these young men and young ladies didn't give him any face at all, going against the Lord Law Enforcer. Chapter 748. Yo, isn't this student Yiqing Luo? A delicate voice was heard from the periphery of the crowd. Following that, Brother Xiong's bunch of brothers opened up a path. A gorgeous lady dressed in a jade-green long dress, with several blossoming peonies embroidered on the cuffs, and golden silk embroidered a few pieces of auspicious clouds, slowly walked over. The golden eyelashes drew a long and narrow arc at the corner of her eyes, making that exquisite face look even more charming. Fifth Miss Shangwan, Brother Xiong's bunch of brothers, bowed respectfully towards the lady as they greeted. Even the law enforcer saw the lady, and his steely expression eased up a little. These people. Fifth Miss Shangguan knows them? Shangguan Luli looked at Yi Qing Luo arrogantly, as her eyes couldn't conceal the resentment. Acquaintances couldn't be more familiar. She intentionally emphasized on the last few words. Anyone would be able to hear the rage in his voice. The law enforcer shouted coldly, "You bunch of good-for-nothings, what are you still standing here for? Arrest all these people who are causing trouble in the marketplace for this law enforcer." Following that, he looked towards Shangguan Luli in a fawning manner. Fifth Miss Shangguan, the marketplace has its own rules. These kids have violated the marketplace's rules, so by right or by reason, they must accept the marketplace's punishment. On the surface, he was praising Shangguan Luli's kindness, advising her not to plead for her friend. In actual fact, he was telling Shangguan Luli that these people had violated the rules. If Shangguan Luli had enmity with these people, she could go to the law enforcement dungeon, and he would do her a favor and personally settle these people. Shangguan Luli shrugged helplessly. "Student Yi, it's not that I don't want to help you, but the law enforcer is someone who values the rules the most. You've created trouble in front of him. Even if the great Luo immortal were to come, he probably wouldn't be able to save you." "Hypocrite." Yin Xiao Yi spat out, pretending to be disgusted as she spat a mouthful of saliva onto the ground. Tong Ziqing's aloof face surfaced a sliver of anger. "Shangguan Luli, it's not wrong for you to raise a dog, but to let it out to bite people, that's your fault as the owner." Looking at Big Bear's group of mercenaries, who looked at Shangguan Liuli with respect, it wasn't hard to guess the relationship between them and Shangguan Liuli. Many young masters and young ladies of large families like to raise a group of their own followers in the martial world. Even the family heads had their own Dark Clan forces in the Jianghu. Shangguan Liuli was famous for being arrogant and despotic. Naturally, she had her reasons and her backing. "I don't have the time to argue with you." Shangguan Liuli sneered as her sharp eyes stared fiercely at Yi Qing Luo. "In the academy, you have Master Gui Yu's protection, but outside the academy, you're nothing." She was, after all, the fifth miss of the Shangguan family. But Yi Qing Luo was merely a nominal Three Springs sect's young matriarch. Furthermore, Three Springs sect had already declined to the point that even if Yi Tian Kuang stood here, he would still have to salute her father. Yi Qing Luo sneered. "Outside the academy, who do you think you are? A you who was humiliated in the academy and almost expelled if it wasn't for third young master Shangguan who helped you. I'm afraid you would have already been chased out of the academy by the director." Shangguan Liuli's face suddenly turned black. Yes, she was almost expelled from the academy by the director. In the academy, her reputation was simply too bad. It was Shangguan Fong who tried every possible way to persuade him to agree to some of the director's requests before he reluctantly agreed to let Shangguan Liuli stay in the academy without informing the family. Otherwise, if this matter were to spread to the ears of the Shangguan family's patriarch. Chapter 749. You. Shangguan Liuli was exasperated. Why did Yi Qing Luo know about this? Third brother had obviously said that other than a few of them, no one else knew about this. Shangguan Liuli noticed that the surrounding onlookers were all looking at her. Even a law enforcer was looking at her. His eyes were filled with astonishment as he widened his eyes and whispered to the people beside him, as though they were discussing the reason why she was expelled from the academy. In Shangguan Liuli's eyes, the surrounding people were all looking at her with a ridiculing gaze, ridiculing her. Shangguan Liuli's expression turned ugly as her embarrassment turned into anger as she patted the law enforcer's shoulder. The law enforcer understood her meaning as he cried out sharply. That team of guards didn't bother about these youngsters' struggles as they swarmed forward and started to capture them. Without Long Yunzhan or Yi Qing Luo's orders, those youngsters didn't dare to casually make a move. But it didn't say that they couldn't hide. Hence, the entire marketplace had turned into a huge scene of chasing each other. A total of 30 overguards were running all over the place. 10 over youngsters dressed in black seemed as though they were playing with those guards. These youngsters were, after all, young, and as they ran, they started to have the intention to tease them. Immediately following that, those 30 over armored guards were tossed left and right by these youngsters. When those armored guards landed on the ground, it gave off an extremely crisp sound. The onlookers burst into laughter. They couldn't help but admire that this group of young lads and young ladies were really fearless. Looking at the guards who had fallen onto the ground, it was mixed with the laughter from the crowd. The law enforcer and Shangguan Liuli's expressions changed, especially the law enforcer. His face felt a burning sensation. His body turned stiff as he tried his best to suppress the urge to slap these youngsters to death. These youngsters were simply too daring. All of them totally disregarded him, the law enforcer. He was a dignified law enforcer who didn't have a fawning expression when they saw him. When had they ever suffered such humiliation? Good. Refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. This law enforcer shall deal with you bunch of reckless brats. Saying that, the law enforcer's palm moved as he struck towards those youngsters' direction. Billowing energy, the imposing manner was like a rainbow. The surrounding air and Xian Qi condensed, forming a huge vortex. The airflow fluctuated, covering the sky and covering the earth, covering all the youths. The law enforcer has personally taken action. These children are really too insensible. They deserve to die for going against the law enforcers. As expected of the law enforcer, look at this palm energy, this strength. The surrounding onlookers naturally wouldn't let go of this opportunity to flatter him. Even if he felt pity for these children and felt that it was a pity, he would definitely not say anything to help them. Seeing that the palm energy was about to engulf the youths in front of them, everyone's nerves were stretched taut. Bang! With a loud bang, wherever the palm wind passed, the stalls exploded. The ground cracked, and countless gravel and items on the stalls flew in all directions. Dust billowed throughout the area. The onlookers and the youths couldn't help but cough. It was extremely uncomfortable to choke on the dust. Hearing so many people coughing, the enforcer retracted his palms arrogantly. "Sir Law Enforcer, something's not right. That slut has disappeared." Shangguan Liuli narrowed her eyes as she viciously scanned the surroundings, but didn't discover Yiqing Luo's figure. Her words had just ended when she saw the dust dispersing. A petite figure raised her head and puffed out her chest, standing in front of the 10 over youngsters. Her long hair cascaded down her shoulders like a waterfall, moving without any wind. Chapter 750. She was just standing there, delicate and small, peerlessly beautiful. But there was a kind of majestic aura, as though everything around her was under her control. The law enforcer was stunned. His eyes widened, and his expression was extremely ugly. This girl actually blocked his palm strike. He was an earth-profound, third-grade cultivator. No matter how he looked at this girl, she was at most a mystic, profound cultivator. How could she possibly block his palm strike? She is an influential figure in the Heavenly Academy, yellow profound 9th grade, but her skills are surprisingly good. She definitely has a magic weapon on her. Shangguan Liuli, who was standing behind him, said hatefully. Shangguan Liuli absolutely didn't believe it. A yellow profound 9th grade cultivator was able to fight evenly with two cold-faced instructors. Even Yiqing Qian, who had advanced to the Earth Profound realm, was not her opponent. Was it possible? The only explanation was only one. Yiqing Luo had an unknown magic weapon on her, which had been helping her. Magic weapon. Was it the magic weapon that Shangguan Liuli mentioned earlier? The law enforcer narrowed his sinister eyes. A trace of greed flashed past his eyes. What kind of magic weapon could allow a yellow profound 9th grade cultivator to block a palm strike from an Earth profound 3rd grade cultivator? Looking at the two people in front of her, their eyes were filled with hatred. Unable to conceal the greed in the depths of their eyes, Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a bloodthirsty sneer. She cracked her fingers. "Law enforcer, you shouldn't have laid your hands on them." When the last word "hand" was uttered, the figure of the woman who was needing his hand suddenly disappeared. Just like how she dealt with Brother Xiong's technique, it was as though she had blended into the air. The law enforcer's reaction speed and Brother Xiong's were two different levels. The law enforcer quickly released his perception, searching for Yi Qing Luo's direction. Suddenly, his eyes flashed. Cheap lass. She was indeed a little tender. The law enforcer sneered as he raised his leg and gave a whirlwind kick, kicking towards the direction of his side. Ah! With a blood-curdling scream, a petite body flew backward and smashed heavily onto the ground. The law enforcer's complacent smile had not completely filled his entire face when he heard Brother Xiong's brothers shouting in panic. Fifth miss? Fifth miss? What happened to Shangwan Liuli? The law enforcement officer turned his head in confusion and was about to look in the direction of the Big Bear brothers. Suddenly, he felt a chill down his spine. Soon after, he heard the girl's light laughter. Where are you looking? The girl's voice was clear and sweet, but in the ears of the law enforcement officers, it sounded like a ghost demanding their lives. When did she get behind him? Who was the person he just kicked? Before this thought could form in his mind, he felt a movement in his head. The law enforcer clearly heard a crisp kacha sound coming from his neck. His body rolled a few times in the air and landed heavily on the ground. Law enforcer! The guards who had fallen to the ground after being teased by the youths struggled to get up and ran towards the enforcers. A few guards stumbled and helped the enforcer up. The enforcer's face was pale, and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. His face, looking to the right, could not move. The slightest movement of his muscles was followed by a bone-piercing pain. How pathetic. Law enforcer. When people reach a certain age, they have to accept their old age. Yi Qing Luo crossed her arms as she stood on the same spot. Her long, curly lashes were like butterfly wings fluttering, looking extremely innocent and pure. The law enforcer was so infuriated that a mouthful of old blood was about to gush out of his heart. His entire body was trembling. The more he trembled, the more pain his dislocated neck was in. Chapter 751. It's you. You're the one who cheated. The enforcer's forehead was filled with cold sweat as his facial features contorted in pain, although he was the market's enforcer. But in terms of status, he naturally couldn't be compared to the four great aristocratic families. How could he afford to offend the Shangwan family? Xiongda's group of people were precisely the followers that Shangwan Fangyi and Shangwan Liuli had raised. He wanted to please the Shangwan clan, and because of this, whenever Big Brother Xiong and his men committed any crimes in the marketplace, he would take the blame for them. Now that he heard Yi Qing Luo was going to tell the Shangwan family about him kicking Shangwan Liuli, his position as the enforcer was probably going to be taken away. Yi Qing Luo spread out her hands. Which eye of yours saw me cheating? Did I use your leg to kick Shangwan Liuli, or did I control your soul to force you to kick Shangwan Liuli? The crowd couldn't help but burst out laughing. Telling lies with a straight face, they only admired Yi Qing Luo. Ginger is indeed spicier with age. Your ability to distort black and white is so powerful. Puffed. At this moment, the enforcer couldn't hold it in as he spat out a mouthful of blood. Age was not only a woman's secret, it was also a man's reverse scale. Especially those who were in high positions. They were used to enjoying the high and mighty days. Every time he thought of his age, he might have to give up his position tomorrow, and so on. He would feel an inexplicable sense of panic. The enforcer was already over 50 years old and thought that he was old but strong and could still stay in this position for another 10 years. But unfortunately, Yi Qing Luo had repeatedly used his age to talk about this. Who could tolerate this? After settling these two people who were blocking the way, Yi Qing Luo didn't want to waste any more of her brother's time as she called out for everyone to set off. Whoever dares to let them leave the market, this enforcer will seal the entire market and none of you will be able to leave. The enforcer was filled with anger. How could he let Yi Qing Luo and the rest leave? Otherwise, he would really not be able to explain himself after he kicked Shangwan Liuli. No matter what, he could not let Yi Qing Luo and the rest leave. The other spectators were simply standing around watching. How could they get shot? Looking at the enforcer's uncontrollable anger and resentful look, they knew that the enforcer was really angry. If Yiqing Luo and the others were to leave, they would be trapped in the marketplace by the law enforcers. The onlookers were furious at the law enforcer's request, but he was still forced by reality, so no matter what, he couldn't let Yiqing Luo and the others leave. There was strength in numbers. This sentence was indeed a truth. Thousands of merchants, adventurers, and whatnot surrounded them tightly. The World Group's mercenaries' faces turned extremely ugly. He had seen shameless people, but he had never seen someone so shameless. What kind of law enforcer was this? His face was so big that he had nowhere to put it. Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased slightly as she narrowed her eyes and swept a glance at the surrounding people. Teaching Big Bear and the enforcers a lesson was what they deserved. But these merchants and adventurers were innocent. All they did was watch from the sidelines and say a few words. If they really led a group of brothers to fight with these merchants and adventurers, they would still be the ones in the wrong in the end. Moreover, he had exhausted all his strength early in the morning. The effect of the following training would be greatly reduced. Their holiday was only 3 days. It definitely couldn't be wasted in the hands of such a senseless person. Want to make peace with the enforcers? Forget it. It was too disgusting. So he couldn't do it even if he ignored his conscience. It's only been a month, and the enforcer's arrogance has become even more arrogant. Since when did the marketplace become the enforcer's territory? Suddenly, a young man's clear voice was heard from outside the crowd. Chapter 752. I'm very curious. Who gave you the guts to bully the mercenary groups passing through the marketplace and order the customers and merchants in the marketplace? That person scoffed lightly, his tone filled with disdain and ridicule. A youth dressed in a blue robe walked over with steady steps. That delicate and immature face was filled with solemnity. Young master, the law enforcer, who had a sinister expression on his face, turned pale when he saw who it was. He anxiously wanted to turn his head and face the person who had just arrived so that he could explain the reason to him. However, the moment he moved his head, he felt a heart-wrenching pain in his neck. That man totally didn't bother about the law enforcer who was howling in pain, as he took quick steps towards Yiqing Luo. Finally, he stood in front of Yiqing Luo and revealed a smile. Vice Group Leader, Immerse Shang has returned to the team. This person was none other than the Mercenary Association's young master, Immerse Shang. Welcome back. Yiqing Luo gazed at the young man's delicate and exquisite face as her lips curled into a smile. Seeing Immerse Shang appear, she finally heaved a sigh of relief. If possible, she didn't want to make a big deal out of it. Yiqing Luo had always believed that it was better to make a friend or ally than to become an enemy. As the saying goes, righteousness is the most important thing in Jianghu. Right now, the World Mercenary Group's reputation was already resounding enough. Yiqing Luo wouldn't let the World Group really become the target of public criticism. If Immerse Shang was able to resolve this matter peacefully, then everything would be fine. The enforcer's face was ashen as he looked at Immerse Shang and Yiqing Luo as his ears kept ringing. Did he hear wrongly? That wasn't an illusion, right? What did the young master of the Mercenary Guild just call that lowly girl? Vice Commander? Return to the team? What does that mean? The guard supporting him said in a hoarse voice. Lord Enforcer, young Master Amo, he seems to have joined a newly established mercenary group last month. That mercenary group is the mercenary group that everyone has been talking about recently. In other words, these young boys and girls. The influential figure that swept the entire mercenary world a month ago, the World Mercenary Group. There were handsome men and beautiful women, and the members were all teenagers. Right, it was none other than these people in front of him. He didn't expect that. He didn't realize this. The law enforcement officer wanted to die. How could he be so blind to offend young Master Amo just to please Shangguan Liuli? As a result, the law enforcement officers started to hate Shangguan Liuli. Young Master Mo, today's matter isn't my fault. It's fifth Miss Shangwan. She intentionally instructed. The enforcer knelt down in front of Mohan Shang with a plop, not caring about his dislocated cervical vertebra, as he spilled out Shangwan Liuli's matters. Fifth Miss Shangwan felt that Vice Group Leader Yi had a heaven-defying magical artifact on him, so she intentionally arranged for Big Xiong's mercenaries to take action on the World Group. This subordinate was also forced. I plead for young Master Mo to show mercy. What nonsense are you spouting? Shangwan Liuli clutched her chest and pointed at the law enforcement officer with resentment in her eyes as she scolded. It's obvious that you were greedy and wanted me to cooperate with you. The enforcer kowtowed desperately, denying Shangwan Liuli's words. Yiqing Luo and the others really didn't have the mood to watch a dog-biting dog show. Moreover, their bite was simply too painful to the eyes. Law enforcement officer, the Mercenary Association specially set up the enforcers and guards in the marketplace so that you can maintain the peace in the marketplace and not to give you the capital to put on airs. Chapter 753. Last month, when the marketplace was massacred, when there was a bloodbath, where were you? Mohan Shang saw the enforcer kowtowing, complaining that he knew he was in the wrong as his brows creased even tighter with a look of annoyance. His height was around the same height as Yiqing Luo, with a delicate face, giving off an indistinguishable feeling. But now that he was standing in front of the enforcer, that overbearing, imposing manner made the enforcer not dare to lift his head. The enforcer didn't dare to respond. Mohan Shang continued. You said you led 130 law enforcers to count the number of people in your secret passageway. On that day of the bloodbath, there wasn't a single law enforcer in the marketplace, not a single one. The enforcer shivered in fear. Last month, after the marketplace was massacred, the Mercenary Association's president wanted to replace the enforcer. But the other elders joined hands to make the enforcer stay. They wanted to give him another chance. But seeing this scene, if Mohan Shang still believed this so-called enforcer, he would be an idiot. 130 law enforcers. So, coincidentally, they went to count the number of people. Even if they really counted the number of people, they needed to count the entire marketplace. Thousands of people had been massacred cleanly before they finished counting. They were obviously greedy for life and afraid of death. This young patriarch will hand this matter over to Father to handle. Enforcer, you'd better behave yourself. The enforcer's pupils dilated. Shangwan Li, who was by the side, had just heaved a sigh of relief when she heard Mohan Shang's cold voice. As for fifth Miss Shangwan, at such a young age, she already knew how to instigate her own people to lay hands on her own classmate in the marketplace, all because of his so-called magic weapon. He sneered as his eyes were filled with disdain, not to mention that Vice Group Leader doesn't have the so-called magic weapon. Even if she did, that has nothing to do with you. To have such vicious thoughts, fifth Miss Shangwan's upbringing is really beautiful. Tomorrow, this young patriarch will personally head over to the Shangwan clan to have a good discussion with Patriarch Shangwan on how to educate his children. Saying that, Mohan Shang turned his head and looked at Yiqing Luo, Vice Group Leader. Let's go. Young Patriarch, Mo, please spare my life. Young Patriarch, Mo, please spare my life. Young Patriarch Mo, this matter is Lu Li's fault. Lu Li will apologize to you. My father sighed. We won't disturb young Patriarch Mo any longer. The expressions of the enforcers and Shangwan Liuli changed drastically, and they immediately pleaded for leniency. However, Mohan Shang totally didn't bother about them. Directly together with Yiqing Luo and the others, they flocked out of the marketplace. The entire marketplace was filled with sighs. Looking at the law enforcement officers and Shangwan Liuli, who were kneeling on the ground, they shook their heads and sighed. Who would have thought that today's show would have so many twists and turns? He didn't expect that even the young master of the mercenary guild would appear. TSK. So it turns out that the mercenary group of those young boys and girls was the World Mercenary Group that was rumored to have been promoted to the bronze rank in one day. It truly lived up to its reputation. No wonder he was so awesome and wasn't afraid of the law enforcers. More than 90 people walked out of the market in a mighty manner. There were actually 2 or 3 mercenary groups following behind him. There were at least 200 to 300 people in each mercenary group. Together, there were more than 1,000 people. This was the only road leading to the mercenary union. It was originally very spacious and could accommodate at least 100 people. At this moment, it was extremely crowded. Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased slightly as she glanced sideways at Emo Han Shang. Han Shang, why are there so many mercenary groups heading towards the mercenary union today? Could it be that there's a new mission? In the marketplace, she saw at least 10 over mercenary groups dressed in different attire. Chapter 754. You don't know? This was not Emo Han Shang's reply, but Xiao Jin. He looked at Yiqing Luo in astonishment. Today is the Mercenary Association's big day. You actually don't know? Big day. Yiqing Luo was at a loss. Every third holiday in the Mercenary Association, they will hold a day of random mission distribution event. Emo Han Shang continued and explained seriously. This event is to promote the mercenary group's unity, enthusiasm, adventurous nature, etc. Random mission distribution event? The Mercenary Association, which looked so strict, would also hold such a joyous event? What a sudden change in style. Yiqing Luo suddenly thought of something. This event was suggested by you? Emo Han Shang bashfully scratched the back of his head. I'm aiming at the mercenary group's common problem and came up with this event. Not only can it help the Mercenary Association build momentum, it indeed can let the various mercenary groups have a sense of competition. The mercenary groups have been established for a long time. It could easily turn into a kind of work mode, just like those old members of the Blue Dragon mercenary group. The past heroic dreams had all been erased by various missions, that kind of passion. And at this moment, a random mission activity appeared. It easily ignited their curiosity. Because of the unknown, so they would be intensely interested. At the same time of interest, the Mercenary Association would also give out double the reward to show encouragement. Not to mention the interest towards the unknown, just this double reward would attract many mercenary groups to participate. Because the rewards from the Mercenary Association, especially the honor points, were simply too hard to obtain. These mercenary groups all want to participate in the random mission distribution event. Yiqing Luo turned her head to look at the 3 groups behind her, and not too far ahead, there were quite a number of mercenary groups. These missions, roughly what kind of missions are there? According to the mercenary group's grade, it will be randomly selected. Emo Han Shang mentioned the event which he had painstakingly designed, as his eyes were filled with smiles. For example, Ordinary Mercenary Group. The random mission scope is roughly low-grade experience points and rare missions, as well as intermediate-grade experience points. Bronze Plate Mercenary Group. The random mission scope is roughly low to medium-grade experience points and rare missions. There are also a small number of mercenary groups who may draw high-grade experience points. Silver Plate Mercenary Group. The random mission scope is the same as others, and there's a probability of drawing complex grade experience points and rare complex grade mission. Complex grade? Yiqing Luo raised her eyebrows in puzzlement. Then what happens if the mission that you've drawn cannot be completed? Although they were randomly selected based on their level. However, if he were to win the lottery and draw a rare mission of the highest level, he would not be able to complete it. He could not just bite the bullet and go to his death. Leader can choose to accept or reject, but if you give up, 100 honor points will be deducted from the mercenary group. Emo Han Shang said seriously and solemnly. Moreover, a mercenary group only has 2 rounds of random qualifications. If they were to give up on both rounds, then this round of random event, they would lose their permanent qualification. That was a good rule. Yiqing Luo turned her head towards Long Yunjian. Do you think we should give it a try? Long Yunjian touched the guild leader's medal and glanced at it. At present, we have a total of 191 honor points. It is only enough for us to give up on 1 mission. Shouldn't have drawn out any weird missions. Yiqing Luo's last word was specially dragged out, as her vision looked towards Mo Han Shang, blinking her eyes, right? Chapter 755. Just as she was saying that, a gentleman's voice was heard from behind. The World Mercenary Group. You don't mind joining us, right? Not waiting for Yiqing Luo and the others to respond, another glib voice was heard. Me too, me too. It's on the way. Following that, there was a lady's sweet voice. Since the few group leaders are going together, you don't mind if I'm alone, right? Yiqing Luo and the rest were at the back of the group, and when they stopped and turned their heads, they saw two men and a lady walking towards them in quick steps. One of the men was dressed in a dark green long robe and looked to be around 25 to 26 years old. He looked like a well-behaved and fair young master. Yiqing Luo had never liked this type of man. An overly refined and well-behaved man would instead look pretentious. Like Xian Mu, like Lung Fengying. These people were people who could stab a knife into your heart with a gentle smile. Looking at the man's side, it was a tall and burly man in a black magua. He had a full beard, and she couldn't tell his age. Beside the two men was a young lady dressed in a peach-colored short skirt. She was about 15 to 16 years old, and that peach-colored short skirt made the young lady look like a peach blossom. The young lady's dressing was extremely simple. Her peach-colored short skirt was clean and nimble, which was convenient for movement. Her hip-length long hair was tied up by a peach-colored hairband. It was slightly messy, but it showed off the young lady's youthful vivacity. The only ornament on her was the peach-colored gauze band on her wrist. These three people, weren't they the group leaders of those three mercenary groups? These three people, what were they trying to do? Yiqing Luo and the rest stopped in their tracks as they waited for the three of them to walk over. I'm Yin Zhan, the group leader of Invincible Mercenary Group, Bronze Plate Mercenary Group. The man in the dark green long robe introduced himself first. That tall and burly man touched his full beard as he laughed loudly. Me? I'm called Shinshan. This name is too artistic and doesn't suit my image. Everyone calls me Big Beard. Just call me that. I'm not some group leader, just the executive group leader of the Blood Demon Mercenary Group. And a Silver Plate Mercenary Group. The woman's lively eyes looked at Yiqing Luo for some time and gave an adorable smile. Student Yi, my name is Tao Tao. You can call me Tao Z. I'm the group leader of Peach Blossom 3000 Mercenary Group. Our group are all women. Classmate? Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes in astonishment. Peach grabbed the corner of her clothes. Her curved eyebrows looked very cute. Student Yi may not know me. I'm also a student of the Heavenly Academy, in the same class as Student Yi Fengyu. I often hear Student Yi Fengyu mention you. Low Profound Class 2 students. Yiqing Luo's peripheral vision glanced at the group of mercenaries in front as her brows creased slightly. Should she consider giving these young servants some ways to disguise themselves? The world was such a small place. One could always run into one after another. If they recognized that they were students from the devil class, it would be troublesome. Classmate Yi, I admire you very much. My wish is to be like you, to become a strong person, to not be afraid of anything, and to always be full of hope. After saying that, Peach shyly curled up her fingers. Yiqing Luo could tell that this lady's every word came from the bottom of her heart. A person's eyes cannot deceive a person's heart. Peach's eyes were limpid and clean. Her eyes were filled with adoration and love for Qin Mu. Yiqing Luo laughed softly, so it's Little Yu's classmate. Little Yu is not very sensible. If he commits any mistakes in the class, you can tell me any time. Peach nodded her head vigorously, her brows raised in joy. Yes, my goddess. Wait, goddess. Chapter 756. Student Yi Fengyu likes you as his sister very much. Every time he mentioned you, his brows would dance, and he would be in high spirits. Even his eyes would light up. As though they had found a common topic, Peach's mouth couldn't stop as she squeezed the two people behind her. Yin Zhan and Bearded Man totally had no chance to step forward. They specially came over, especially to build a relationship with Yiqing Luo. After all, this the World Mercenary Group, Although they looked like a bunch of young men and young ladies, but their ability was there, and they even had the young patriarch of the Mercenary Association. Who could deny their influence in the mercenary world? But this 3,000 Peach Blossom mercenary group leader had been forcefully holding onto Yi Qing Luo's arm, so they didn't even have a chance to interrupt. Yin Zhan's gentle brows revealed some impatience. Bearded Man wasn't a patient person. They had already walked for 100 miles, and Peach Blossom group leader was still holding onto Yi Qing Luo, chatting about everything under the heavens. He and Yin Zhan were following behind, feeling extremely awkward. How could Bearded Man endure it? He directly walked up and grabbed Peach's arm, casually pushing her back. We're all here to befriend the World Group. Can't you give me a chance to speak? Bearded Man was a typical muscular man. His figure was tall and sturdy. This push of his was very little to him. But if it was placed on a delicate young lady, how could Peach maintain her balance? Her feet were unsteady as she fell downwards. Be careful! An anxious voice was heard, and immediately, Peach's petite body was caught in a wide embrace. Peach was slightly stunned as she was enclosed in that warm embrace, which was extremely hard. His body didn't have the usual sweaty stench of an ordinary man, but it was fresh and clean, an extremely soothing smell. Peach raised her head as her long and thick lashes fluttered, meeting with a pair of resplendent starry eyes, so dazzling that she felt a little dizzy. From this angle, against the light, the man who was hugging her had a layer of hazy radiance on his features. This face, although it wasn't outstanding and wasn't considered handsome or good-looking, but it had a unique charm, especially that pair of eyes, which could tug at one's heartstrings. Miss Tao, what's the matter with you? Are you all right? Xiao Jin saw that she didn't say a word and assumed that she was frightened by Bearded Man's rough actions as he released her hand. Following that, he walked in front of Bearded Man and tugged his collar. How can you lay your hands on such a delicate beauty? Are you still a man? Bearded Man's face instantly turned red. I just gave her a light push. Who asked that last to monopolize your group leader? We're here to make friends, not to be followers. No, it's fine. Peach blushed and moved away from Xiao Jin's side. She actually... Such an ordinary-looking man. Moreover, he was such an ordinary-looking man. Seeing him reprimand the Bearded Man for her sake, Taozi blushed even more. She pursed her lips shyly and said, I'm fine. Thank you for saving me. Xiao Jin let go of Big Beard and clapped his hands. When he turned to look at Peach, he revealed a gentle smile. No, Miss Tao, you don't have to thank him. That bastard Jin's wish is to be a hero and save the beauty. You fulfilled his wish, so he should thank you. A clear voice directly interrupted Xiao Jin's words. Yin Xiao stepped forward with a cold smile on her face. She reached out and grabbed Xiao Jin's arm. Chapter 757. Let Jin get lost. Yin Xiaoyi's expression changed immediately. She lifted her leg and kicked him away, rushing towards the brothers in front. No matter how Xiao Jin shouted, Yin Xiao did not turn back. He only stopped when he reached Zhao Bo's side. Seeing Yin Xiao ignoring him and talking to Zhao Bo about something, Xiao Jin scratched his head. How strange. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled into a helpless smile as she shook her head. Jin Zi, let me give you 2 words. What? You deserve it. Why do I deserve it? Xiao Jin's eyes widened as he grumbled indignantly. I didn't do anything to her. I didn't provoke her. How did I? Before she could finish her words, Yi Qing Luo couldn't be bothered with the teasing Xiao Jin as she shifted her vision towards Yin Zhan and Bearded Man. You want to befriend group leader? That's right. We want to make friends with you. The Bearded Man nodded profusely, but as soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly felt that something was amiss. Yin Zhan frowned. Aren't you the leader of the World Mercenary Group? I'm not. Yi Qing Luo pointed at Long Yun Zhan. Group leader is over there. Long Yun Zhan raised his expressionless face and looked over coldly. Yin Zhan and the Bearded Man shivered and laughed dryly. Oh my God, little kids nowadays have such a strong aura. With one look, one could tell that he wasn't someone who was easy to get along with. Ever since the World Mercenary Group stepped into the marketplace, they had never seen the World Group leader speak a single word. Those mercenary youngsters also listened to Yi Qing Luo's commands. It was no wonder that they mistook their leader for someone else. Our Blood Fiend mercenary group wishes to befriend the World Group. It doesn't matter who the leader is. What's important is that we, the Blood Fiends, admire your team. Big Beard shouted loudly. That's right. Yin Zhan smiled warmly. You're all so young, yet you're able to establish your own team and develop it so rapidly. You're indeed young heroes. There's no need to be so courteous. Time is of the essence, so let's hurry over to the Mercenary Association first. If we're late, we won't be able to take part in the activity. Yiqing Luo smiled as she changed the topic. It was good to have another friend. However, they were also clear about what kind of friends they should make and what kind of friends they shouldn't. For example, Yin Zhan. He looked cultured and refined, and his speech was also very refined. But from his gaze and the occasional expressions of emotions, Yiqing Luo was able to determine that this person called Yin Zhan was arrogant, conceited, and extremely ambitious. Rather than saying that he wanted to make friends with the World Group, it would be better to say that he wanted to use the World Group to complete a certain objective of his. To be friends with this kind of person, you must always be able to protect his interests. Otherwise, once they lost their value, Yin Zhan might very well sell them out in exchange for greater benefits. As for the other bearded man, he was a straightforward person and didn't have a big heart. However, he was too inflexible, and he had an extraordinary dedication and passion for his mercenary team. Of course, this was not to say that this was bad. Yiqing Luo was the same. She had the same persistence and passion towards her own team. They all had the attitude of no matter what's right or wrong, my brother is right. If this sort of shielding really hurt the other party's team, a second ago, they were still calling each other brothers, but in the next second, a knife could be placed on the other party's neck. Because of this, Yiqing Luo didn't intend to have too deep of a relationship with these two people. After all, the youths in her team had never stepped foot in the outside world and were too naive. Chapter 758. Miss Yi, are you going to take part in the random mission activities? Why don't we form a team? Yin Zhan sent out an invitation. Bearded man stroked his beard as he laughed loudly. Right, let's form a team. Let's 4 teams do it together, and after we take on the mission, we'll work together. We have sufficient manpower, and our ability is right there. So there's no need to worry about drawing a mission that we can't complete. That's a good idea. Perhaps we can spare some time to take on the second random mission. Yin Zhan nodded his head in agreement. When Yiqing Luo heard that, her long and narrow eyes rose slightly as her peripheral vision swept past the both of them. Then which team should we start with? Yin Zhan and Bearded Man replied in unison. Of course we'll start with me. Before they could finish their words, the both of them seemed to have realized something as they exchanged glances and lowered their eyelids awkwardly. After some time, Yin Zhan found the right words. What I mean is, let's start with the most complicated mission. Anyway, we have a lot of people, so no matter how complicated the mission is, we'll be able to complete it in the shortest time. Bearded Man nodded his head repeatedly. But when the both of them raised their eyes and met Yiqing Luo's face, they instantly felt a chill down their spines. This peerlessly beautiful, dainty, and adorable young lady had a faint smile hanging on her lips as her eyes were curved, narrow, and enchanting. She looked so innocent and harmless. But inexplicably, it made the both of them feel a sense of trepidation. If I didn't remember wrongly, earlier young Master Shen mentioned that your Blood Demon Mercenaries group is a Silver Plate mercenary group. That means that your random mission is very likely to draw a complicated great experience mission or some other complicated rare mission. Yiqing Luo's tone were gentle and slow, not at all rude. Bearded Man's expression stiffened slightly. Of course, the probability of a complicated grade mission is very low. But even if you draw a high-grade experience mission, it's very likely that with our 3 teams, we can only accompany you to fight for this mission. Standing on a bystander's point of view and lending a helping hand, it's not impossible. But I also have my team and my brothers. I can't possibly drag my own brothers to accompany you to do something impossible. Yin Zhan coughed a few times and hid the hostility in his eyes. He smiled gently and said, Miss Yi is thoughtful. Peach snorted coldly and stepped forward, hooking Yi Qing Luo's arm. Her pretty face was full of sarcasm. Stop it. All of you have been in the mercenary world for several years. Why are you pretending to be a newbie? What do you mean? Xiao Jin could tell that there was a hidden meaning in her words. He moved forward and asked in confusion. When Peach's gaze met Xiao Jin's, she shifted her gaze away in a somewhat flustered manner. Her cheeks were slightly red as she lowered her eyelashes and said, The two of them want to join forces and trick you into doing random missions for their mercenary group. Looking at the Peach in this state, Yi Qing Luo's heart thumped hard. Her attention was completely not on the matter of Yin Zhan and the bearded man's deception. His thoughts drifted to the other side. Cough, cough. Could it be? Peach really fell in love with Xiao Jin at first sight? In this other world, strength was the most important factor, and appearance was the second factor. Would a woman fall in love with Xiao Jin at first sight? The world was too fantastical. One must know that Xiao Jin's looks were absolutely not good-looking, especially in the world mercenary group, which was filled with handsome men and beautiful women. That face of his seemed even more ordinary. Looking at Peach, her appearance was delicate and lovely, captivating even the birds and beasts, overshadowing the moon and flowers, and her character was quick-witted and adorable. Looking at Peach's dressing again, as well as the 200 female mercenary group, which she had established, her family background was absolutely not bad. Whatever type of man she wanted, it was just a matter of curling her fingers. Chapter 759. Qing Luo, Qing Luo. The voice beside her ears made Yi Qing Luo abruptly regain her senses. Her long lashes fluttered as her eyes regained their luster. Earlier, what did you guys say? Did she miss something strange? Why? Peach, Xiao Jin, and Long Yin Zhan were staring at her without blinking. And Yin Zhan and bearded man's expressions were so ugly. Qing Luo, at such a serious moment, how could you get lovesick and think of DT on? Xiao Jin hooked Yi Qing Luo's shoulder as he teased her with an arc. Think of what DMO Xian. She was obviously thinking of him. Xiao Jin's luck with women, since he dared to tease her. Regarding the possibility of Peach falling in love with him at first sight, she wouldn't tell him. Let's see how this fellow with no EQ would deal with the conflict between him and Yin Xiao Yi. Student Yi Qing Luo, I'm analyzing that the both of them want to make use of the World Mercenary Group's evidence. Peach stuck out her tongue at Yin Zhan and bearded man. Let me explain to you the rules of random missions. The time limit for random missions is 3 days, and the time limit for drawing the mission will end at midnight today. Saying that, Peach specially made a 3-day hand gesture. And the range of the random mission could possibly be in some corner of the West Continent or some dangerous place. Just the journey back and forth would take at least half a day or at least a day. We might not even be able to complete the first random mission on time, so don't even mention about how we still have time and can take on the second mission, etc. Such a ridiculous topic. Saying that, Peach gave a cold harumph as she looked at Yin Zhan in disdain. If I didn't guess wrongly, Group leader Yin used the same method to coax bearded man, and on seeing that our student Yi Qing Luo is a newly established mercenary group and doesn't know the rules of random missions, he tried to coax her to help your mercenary group to complete the mission. Yin Zhan's refined face flushed red instantly. Bearded man's eyes widened. He was indeed attracted by Yin Zhan's words and was prepared to work together with Yin Zhan's invincible mercenary group. Following that, the both of them saw the World Mercenary Group's magnificent feat in the marketplace. He thought that this group of young people who didn't know the rules would easily take the bait. He immediately followed them. He had not expected. Not only did Yin Zhan want to deceive the World Mercenary Group, he even wanted to deceive him. The bearded man's chest was filled with rage. The flames in his eyes danced as he glared fiercely at Yin Zhan. In the end, Yin Zhan was only the leader of a bronze plate mercenary group. Although the mercenary group had been around for almost 3 years, the reason why the mercenary group was able to develop to where it was now was entirely because of his brain, his cleverness, and his gentle and refined appearance. He was able to gain the trust of many people, and from there, they could make some small moves. But to this day, it was only a bronze plate mercenary group. Big Beardy was the executive leader of Silver Mercenary Group. He could not afford to offend them. In his panic, Yin Zhan pointed the spearhead at Peach. You're talking nonsense. If it's really as you said, then wouldn't you be following us to get close to Miss Yi and even trying to establish a relationship with Miss Yi? Wouldn't you be trying to make use of the World Mercenary Group? Peach rolled her eyes, and her pretty face was full of pride. My Peach Blossom 3000 Mercenary Group doesn't do any fighting or killing. We are mainly responsible for gathering information. In other words, she had more or less figured out Yin Zhan's reputation and the hookups he had done in the past. Yin Zhan staggered a few steps back. He opened his mouth and wanted to refute something. Chapter 760. It's because I know what kind of person you are that I specially followed you over. I cannot let you deceive my goddess. Peach raised her head complacently as a smile flashed past her eyes. But I have to thank you. It's you who gave me the courage to speak to my goddess. Yi Qing Luo. Wait a minute, this goddess, what the hell was that? And this voice, this tone, this expression, what was going on? Yi Qing Luo wailed in her heart. Her sexual orientation was out. Right? Positive. Constant. No. Do. 100. Together. Amen. Let Peach fall in love with Xiao Jin at first sight, to see through his inner handsomeness. Peach's words made Yin Zhan's face turn ashen. His body tensed up as he stared fiercely at Peach, wishing that he could tear that mouth into several pieces. However, Peach remained unmoved. She was still smiling like a flower as she whispered something to Yi Qing Luo. Yin Zhan's eyes were overflowing with viciousness as he clenched his fists tightly. Just as he was about to turn around and leave, the bearded man, standing beside him, suddenly punched his face. A bam was heard, and Yin Zhan was unable to react in time as he fell onto the ground. Bearded man's physique was huge and definitely not just for show. When this punch landed, Yin Zhan's delicate little body was totally unable to withstand his devastation. Damn it, Yin Zhan, you even dare to lie to me. If I don't destroy your mercenary group today, I'm not called Bearded Man. Bearded Man was filled with rage as he pressed Yin Zhan onto the ground as he raised his fist and punched him again. Yi Qing Luo and the others naturally weren't interested in these two men's fight. At this moment, Yi Qing Luo's attention was attracted by Peach's find-out news. To have one's own network of informants and to know all the news in the continent was an extremely important step to establish one's own force. For those large-scale mercenary groups, they would split out a portion of their forces to form a network of informants, especially to find out all sorts of news for the mercenary group. Yi Qing Luo had naturally thought of establishing such an organization. She intended to wait for the world group to mature a little before discussing this matter. Today, after Peach mentioned it, she had an idea. Group leader. Executive group leader. The Invincible Guild and Blood Demon Guild were still waiting for their guild leader's response when they suddenly saw the two guild leaders fighting each other. He immediately rushed forward and pulled the leaders of both sides apart. Weren't they discussing the cooperation between the two mercenary groups not long ago? Why was it that after roping in the world group, the members of the world group left with that female group, and these two group leaders started fighting instead? Raid the Invincible Guild. You even dare to deceive me. The bearded man was aggressive. Idiot. Don't fall for that woman's provocation. Yin Zhan's facial muscles were bruised, and blood was still seeping from the corner of his mouth. He couldn't hide the sarcasm on his face. Those two women are in cahoots with each other. They deliberately teamed up to make us lose the chance to participate in a random mission. You really fell for it and even hit me. Are you stupid? Being reprimanded, the bearded man was a little stunned. Blood Demon Guild's leader behind him creased his brows. What do you mean by this? If you really annihilate my invincible mercenary group today, the two women's plot will succeed. Yin Zhan heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that the two muscular and fierce-looking managers had fallen for his trap. However, the expression on his face and the angry tone of his voice remained unchanged. Chapter 761. The Mercenary Association has a rule that those mercenary groups who participate in the random assignment of missions are not allowed to have any conflicts with other mercenary groups or do anything that harms other mercenary groups. Otherwise, their participation rights will be revoked. Yin Zhan rubbed his chest, which was in pain from the beating, as he steadied himself with the help of his members. He pointed at the bearded man and scolded furiously. If you really destroy Invincible, not only will my Invincible be destroyed, even the Blood Demon group, which you have painstakingly built up till now, will also be destroyed. Senior's words are indeed the truth. A woman's heart is the most vicious. Yin Zhan clenched his teeth tightly as the veins on his forehead popped out. The World Mercenary Group. Peach Blossom 3000 Mercenary Group. I, Yin Zhan, will be irreconcilable with them. Blood Demon Group's leader didn't understand what had happened earlier. Seeing the bearded man in a daze, he walked over to Yin Zhan guiltily and kept on apologizing. Brother, it's my fault. I don't have any brains. Those two ladies' words made me believe them. Brother, why don't you beat me up? Beat me back. Forget it. You've been cheated by them. Yin Zhan's eyes sparkled, but his face was filled with helplessness as he patted his shoulder lightly. You must learn to be more careful in future and learn more from your Blood Demon Group's leader. When Blood Demon Group's leader heard himself mentioned, he didn't know what was going on, but he had to pretend that he knew everything clearly as he put on a humble look and waved his hand. All right. Luckily, there's the intelligent leader Yin around. Otherwise, based on the bearded man's blockhead, he would definitely be cheated by those two ladies. The World Mercenary Group and Peach Blossom 3000 actually dare to play us like that. I, Yin Zhan, will definitely take revenge for this. Yin Zhan pretended to be infuriated as he clenched his fist and bellowed. The bearded man was fuming. Damn it, I hate being cheated the most. Just as the two of them were about to punish Yiqing Luo with righteous indignation, a lady's sharp voice was heard from not too far away. I have a way to deal with the World Mercenary Group. I wonder if the both of you are willing to cooperate with me. The two mercenary groups' gazes turned towards that direction at the same time. They saw a group of about 60 to 70 mercenary group walking over. Those mercenary groups were dressed strangely and looked like ruffians. At a glance, one could tell that they were the kind of lowly mercenary groups. The leader of that mercenary group was a man and a woman. The woman was wearing a jade green dress and was extremely beautiful and dazzling. The man was wearing a dark robe and had his wounds simply bandaged. He covered his mouth and nose with one hand, as if he was in pain. Yin Zhan quickly cupped his hands and bowed to the two. Fifth Mistress Shangguan, law enforcer. The other mercenaries quickly followed suit and saluted. Shangguan Liuli narrowed her eyes, and her voice was filled with resentment. My mercenary group doesn't have the qualifications to participate in the event, so I can play some tricks and stop them from completing their mission. The law enforcement officer at the side also gritted his teeth and spat out words hatefully. Even if the mercenary guild wants to remove me from my position, they will need a period of time. What's more, the connections I've built over the years have long been set. The other mercenary groups will more or less give me face. What do you need us to do? Yin Zhan and the bearded man looked at each other, their eyes filled with ruthlessness. Shangguan Liuli narrowed her eyes and sneered. Crush her. Let the World Mercenary Group become a joke. What should I do? Random mission. Shangguan Liuli lowered her head as her eyelashes fluttered and her fine long hair covered half of her face. Only the smile on the corners of her lips became increasingly gloomy. I've already asked for men from my family and informed the Yuchi family. No matter what mission the World Group draws, I will make it so that they won't be able to return. The few of them exchanged glances and smiled as their eyes were filled with resentment towards the World Group. No one discovered that person who lowered her head. Chapter 762. Mercenary Association. The usually spacious mercenary association was now crowded with people. All sorts of mercenary groups' uniforms were crowded together. And in front of the mercenary association's main hall, to receive missions, there was a high stage which could accommodate 100 people. On top of the high stage, there was a huge crystal screen, and on it, there were a few big words, Random Mission Drawing Area. A few people dressed in the Mercenary Association's staff uniform were busy on the high stage. Below was already crowded with groups of mercenary groups, and it was extremely crowded. There were quite a number of mercenary groups who were arranged by their group leaders to wait outside the Mercenary Association for the results. Yiqing Luo looked around and estimated that there were at least 200 over mercenary groups waiting for the random mission. Among them, there was no lack of silver plate mercenary groups. As for the gold plate mercenary groups, she didn't see a single one. Mo Hanshang saw Yiqing Luo looking around and explained, "The gold plate mercenary group is the Mercenary Association's distinguished group, so naturally they enjoy the distinguished rights. Their random missions have already been drawn, and they have all left the Mercenary Association to complete their missions." Yiqing Luo nodded her head in understanding. No matter where, outstanding people were able to enjoy special privileges. For example, Heavenly Academy's class of gods. For example, Mu brothers who could enter and leave the academy anytime and anywhere. For example, Mercenary Association's gold plate mercenary group. For example, now, basking in Mo Hanshang's glory, their seats had long been arranged by Mo Hanshang. Right at the first row below the high stage, the best seat. Of course, Yiqing Luo didn't bring her group of 90 over people to squeeze here. Mo Hanshang had only prepared 6 seats. If there were too many, it would definitely cause others to gossip about it. Hence, the ones sitting at the front row were her, Mo Hanshang, Long Yunzhan, and the others. Plus Xiaobo. Xiaobo was overwhelmed by favor to be able to sit at this seat. I'm not suitable. It's better to let Miss Mo Yuing in. He had brought his brothers to join the world group verbally, although it had been half a month or so. But the actual day of joining and obtaining the world group's medal was today. This should be the second time Yiqing Luo met him. Why did Yiqing Luo trust him so much? Drawing random missions was an important matter. Even when he was in Blue Dragon Mercenary Group, he didn't have the chance to stand with Jitsong Tian in the Mercenary Association to see Jitsong Tian drawing random missions and discussing whether to accept this mission or not. But Yiqing Luo left her capable assistant Mo Yuing outside. Instead, they brought him an outsider in, and it was the best seat in the first row. This was a treatment he had never enjoyed before. If you're not suitable, then who is? Yiqing Luo only smiled. Regarding the mercenary group's understanding, we are still too inexperienced. You are the senior. We still need your opinion on many matters. After saying that, she shifted her gaze and continued to observe the situation around her. His opinion? He was a mercenary who didn't even have the qualifications to participate in such a grand occasion. Could he really give his opinion? Zhao Bo sat on his seat and was feeling restless as he kept shooting his gaze towards Yiqing Luo. As though sensing his gaze, Yiqing Luo also looked over at him. After meeting his gaze, Yiqing Luo revealed a sweet smile, as though she was consoling him not to be nervous, that she was here for everything. His heart inexplicably calmed down. She was clearly just a child. Clearly, she was younger than him. Why did he have such boldness? At this moment, Zhao Bo finally understood what he lacked in the Blue Dragon group. It was warmth. To Jitsong Tian, these mercenaries were merely chess pieces which he could make use of, or perhaps tools to fight for him to conquer the world. However, for Yiqing Luo, she treated all the mercenaries as real people, a living human being. She would stand on the mercenary's standpoint, from a mercenary's point of view, considering the feeling of being a mercenary. Very warm. Chapter 763. At around 9 or 10 o'clock, 3 old men dressed in white robes walked onto the stage. They looked like they were immortals. Yiqing Luo couldn't understand. Why did these authoritative elders like to wear a white robe with fluttering sleeves and white long hair? Could it be just to look like an immortal? Just to show their inner qualities? Those 3 elderly men had badges which represented the mercenary guild's elders on their chests. All the mercenary groups stood up and bowed towards the 3 elderly men. After the 3 elderly men took their seats, they started to ring the bell one after another. After the time it took for half an incense stick to burn, everyone felt their ears were buzzing before they stopped. Following that, one of the elderly men stood up and used his profound qi to amplify his voice as it slowly rippled in the air. After the unchanging opening speech, they slowly entered the main topic. Another elder stood up and started to prepare for the random mission to be released. He walked to the front of the stage, and with a flip of his sleeves, a pile of huge wooden tokens hung on his wrist. Those wooden tokens were about the size of 2 fingers and were densely packed together. There were at least 200 over pieces. The elder's vision swept downwards. These are the number tokens for the random mission. Each mercenary group can only take 1 piece of number token. If you take more, your participation rights will be revoked on the spot. So, I'll give you to the count of 10 to discuss and send someone out to take the number token. His voice paused, and countless of mercenary guild staff around shouted in unison. 1, 2, 3. 200 over mercenary groups speedily pushed out their trusted people or personally went up. Yiqing Luo directly let Zhao Bo go up. The moment the 10th countdown ended, the elder in front of the stage flipped his sleeves forcefully. The 200 over number tokens in his hands were like scattered flowers, scattering towards the mercenary group's positions below. Instantly, numerous mercenary groups jumped up and stretched out their hands to grab a piece of number token and return to their own group's area. In just a moment, all the wooden tokens were snatched up. Zhao Bo returned to his seat and passed the number token to Long Yunzhan. Yiqing Luo took a glance at the back of the number. The number was hilarious. Number 238. Zhao Bo lowered his head in guilt. I'm sorry. What's there to be sorry about? The mission is random. It doesn't matter if you draw it early or late. The mission is still random. There's no difference. Yiqing Luo disagreed. But there are no buts or buts. With 200 teams, we'll only be able to reach midnight at most. In other words, it would be 1 or 2 in the afternoon. We just need to conserve our energy and rest well. Even if these mercenary groups were the first to be drawn, they would still have to sit here and wait for the random missions to be released before they could move together. This was also to ensure that everyone had the same starting point. So to Yiqing Luo, there was no difference whether the number plate was at the front or the back. In the middle of the mercenary workshop, a beautiful woman gently pulled the hand of the person beside her. She frowned slightly. Just now, I think I saw Zhao Bo. The man who was holding the number plate and cursing suddenly raised his head and furrowed his brows. That traitor Zhao Bo is here too? Great. Very good. After betraying the Blue Dragon mercenary group, he still dares to appear at this kind of place. The woman gave a light humph. I asked you to watch over him, but you didn't believe me. You even allowed Zhao Bo to bring so many members away, causing quite a number of losses. The man's eyes were filled with viciousness. After the mission is drawn, I'll make him pay for all the losses. Chapter 764. Yiqing Luo had been observing the steps of drawing the mission. She roughly understood the main process. The mercenary group sent out a representative as he walked up the stage. In front of the crystal screen, which was flowing with water, he placed his number plate and his mercenary group badge on the screen, and a mission scroll would randomly pop out. The mission contents in the scroll, the mercenary group could choose to announce it or choose to keep it secret. But after the mercenary group drew the mission, the crystal screen would display the mission's grade and difficulty, as well as the mercenary group's honor points. Other mercenary groups could also guess what kind of mission this mercenary group had taken on based on the grade and difficulty. The speed of selecting the mission was rather fast. Among them, Yiqing Luo saw a familiar mercenary group. That was the Silver Plate mercenary group, which Lung Fenghua hired when she was brought to the Magic Beast Forest by DMO Xian. If she didn't remember wrongly, that group leader was called Xia Hoji. The last time she came into contact, this mercenary group's overall ability was not bad. Under the leader's leadership, the members were orderly and their reaction was not bad. Towards Xia Hoji, she rather admired him. She could consider getting in touch with him. If they could become allies, that would be for the best. Of course, the prerequisite was that Xia Hoji had taken a liking to the world group before she could consider the future matters. Yiqing Luo wasn't narcissistic to the point of thinking that all the mercenary groups wanted to climb up with the world group. Let's not talk about whether there was any relationship with the world group. The development of the world group, till now, had only been established for a month. In terms of ability or experience, they couldn't be compared to those veteran mercenary groups. Approximately 4 hours later, Yiqing Luo was already drowsy when she finally reached the number plate after 200. Coincidentally, the two mercenary groups who had a conflict with Yiqing Luo and the rest were both ranked after 200. Peach first went up to draw a mission and drew a middle-grade experience point mission. It wasn't considered too difficult, and the reward was 20 points of mercenary group honor points. Double reward was 40 points. Peach naturally chose to accept this mission. Not long later, Bearded Man went up and drew a high-grade experience point mission. The reward was 50 points of mercenary group honor points. To the Blood Demon mercenary group, this mission was neither difficult nor easy. After getting the group leader's indication, Bearded Man took the scroll and went down the stage. Then, Yin Zhan stepped onto the stage. He didn't go through the process of drawing missions directly. Instead, he stood in front of the crystal screen and looked at the mercenary groups below. He smiled warmly and said, "Everyone has waited for such a long time, so you must be a little tired. If I may be so bold, I will bring you a little episode to refresh your spirits." Yin Zhan's voice slowly spread in the air along with his qi. The mercenary groups below were already impatient and annoyed from the wait. They only hoped to finish the drawing immediately and listen to the bullshit of the elders of the mercenary union so that they could complete their missions immediately. Now that Yin Zhan had appeared, what kind of interlude would he bring? They didn't have the leisure to do that. Other than a few bored mercenary groups raising their arms in agreement, most of the mercenary groups looked impatient, urging Yin Zhan to finish the task and get off the stage. What is he trying to do? Xiao Jin suddenly tightened his grip on the coin dart and frowned. Yin Zhan was definitely not a magnanimous person. Their instincts told them that Yin Zhan's episode was probably related to them. Yiqing Luo raised her brows as she looked at the man who was still smiling warmly on the stage. "I'm afraid he wants to slap our faces." Chapter 765. Before Yiqing Luo could reply, she heard a scornful sneer coming from the other side of Qiao Jin. "That's right, that Miss Tao of yours has exposed this hypocrite's real face, and this hypocrite wants to slap that Miss Tao of yours on the face." Immediately following that voice laughed disdainfully. "Slut Jin, in order to protect that Miss Tao of yours beautiful face, you'd better stick your face over obediently and let that hypocrite Yin Zhan hit you." Xiao Jin's brows creased tightly as he threw the gold coin dart onto the table with a pa sound. "Yin Xiao Yi, you're very strange today. Have I offended you? Is there any meaning in targeting me with every single word?" Yin Xiao Yi's beautiful eyes stared straight at Xiao Jin as her gaze was chilly like frost. She opened her mouth and was about to speak, but she heard Xiao Jin continuing, "Even if I've offended you, Miss Tao hasn't offended you, right? Today is the first time we've met Miss Tao, and every single word you've said is targeting Miss Tao, ruining Miss Tao's reputation. Are you sick?" All the words were stuck in her throat. Yin Xiaoyi's expression was steely green as she clenched her fists tightly. After some time, she bore with her anger as her red lips curled into a self-deprecating arc. "I'm indeed sick. Saying that, she shifted her gaze away as she stared at the stage, not saying a single word. Xiao Jin was stunned. If it was usual times, if he scolded Yin Xiao Yi, the consequence would be his head exploding, but Yin Xiao Yi had no reaction and even admitted that she was sick. She couldn't really be angry, right? Xiao Jin's arrogance instantly disappeared as that serious and reasonable expression collapsed. Xiao Yi. All right. I'm the one who's sick. I'm in the wrong, all right? His tone softened, but Yin Xiao Yi's gaze was fixed on the stage as she ignored him. My dear Grandaunt, I'm in the wrong. I shouldn't have scolded you. You hit me? Hit me all right? At this moment, Xiao Jin was completely flustered. He and Yin Xiao Yi had long become a habit of fooling around. No matter how overboard his words were or how out of line he was, Yin Xiao Yi would always use the same attitude to reply him. But Yin Xiao Yi actually ignored him. Grandaunt Jinzi. Yi Qing Luo coughed lightly as she suppressed her voice. Everyone is looking at you, your matters. After we leave the Mercenary Association, we can slowly talk about it, all right? Yin Zhan had originally been on the stage, and he had said an interlude to liven things up, causing countless mercenary groups to react. When Xiao Jin slammed the coin darts on the table, it immediately attracted the attention of the mercenary groups. Immediately, everyone's gaze focused on Xiao Jin. Fortunately, their voices weren't loud, so other than the mercenary groups at the back, no one else could hear their conversation. Otherwise, it would be extremely embarrassing. Xiao Jin's complexion alternated between green, white, and finally completely red. The mercenary corps below the high platform suddenly laughed out loud. This was a real refreshing interlude. Yin Zhan stood on the high platform, his expression not much better. When he specifically drew a mission, it attracted everyone's attention. Instead, it allowed the world group to occupy the sights of the other mercenary groups. Why was this the world group always going against him? The more he thought about it, the more resentment he felt towards the world group. He gritted his teeth and clenched his fists tightly, but maintained a cultured and refined look on his face as he cleared his throat and raised his voice. I believe everyone has heard of the World Mercenary Group's name. A mercenary group established by a group of 15 to 16-year-old young lads, and on the next day, it was promoted from an ordinary mercenary group to a bronze plate mercenary group. Chapter 766. The World Mercenary Group, the middle and lower class mercenary groups in the mercenary world, had basically all heard of it. To be able to establish a mercenary group for the second time and directly upgrade to a bronze plate. In the entire Mercenary Association's history, there was only one heaven-defying existence, the World Mercenary Group. If it was said that before this the World Group was established, it had already nurtured numerous high-level cultivators and had abundant financial support, as well as a strong backing. On the second day of establishment, if they were able to upgrade to a bronze plate, they wouldn't feel surprised. But the World Mercenary Group had 60 over members, and although they were all from the Imperial Palace, but everyone's average age was 15 years old, and the oldest was just 18 years old. No matter how powerful they were, they absolutely couldn't be considered as high-level cultivators, right? Financial support? According to what the Yuchi family said, the World Mercenary Group's headquarters was in a huge mansion in a corner of Three Springs City, which looked extremely old. The only commendable thing about that mansion was that the security measures were done extremely well. Other than the World Group's members, no outsiders were able to enter. But this showed even more that these youngsters weren't willing to let others see their old and dilapidated mansion as a joke. Talking about the strong background backing. This Yiqing Luo was the young matriarch of Three Springs Sect, but Three Springs Sect had been going downhill in recent years. Moreover, Yiqing Luo wasn't favored in Three Springs Sect. Especially with the recent waves of scandals in Three Springs Sect, it had long caused Three Springs Sect's reputation to hit rock bottom. The biggest backing was probably the Overlord. But other than giving Yiqing Luo a wave of young men and young ladies from the Imperial Palace, the Overlord hadn't taken any action to help the World Group. The more they thought, the more lost the mercenary groups felt. These youngsters were so outstanding at such a young age. If they were allowed to develop, wouldn't they be able to crush them in minutes? Since ancient times, heroes are born from the youngsters. I, Yin, have long admired the World Mercenary Group. Taking this opportunity, I, Yin, represent my invincible group to issue a challenge to the World Mercenary Group. Yin Zhan saw that his words had already attracted the attention of those mercenary groups as the smile on his lips grew even wider. His vision shot towards Yiqing Luo, who was seated in the first row. The mercenary groups below instantly went into an uproar. Challenge the world group? As an old mercenary group, no matter how dissatisfied they were with the world group, no one dared to find trouble for them in the open, right? What do you want to challenge the World Mercenary Group for? The elder, who was standing by the side of the crystal screen, received Imo Hanshang's signal and took a step forward, standing in front of Yin Zhan, as he asked in a deep voice. Yin Zhan revealed a confident smile. Let's take advantage of this random mission. The first mercenary group to complete the mission will be the winner. He then looked towards Long Yunzhan. For the sake of fairness, the world group has a total of 98 people. Invincible Battles will also send 98 people to participate in the random mission. Challenging in front of so many mercenary groups. Actually, to the world group, this challenge was something they could only choose to accept. If he didn't accept this challenge, he would probably become a laughingstock in the mercenary world. Accepting and winning, the world group was once again famous in the mercenary world. As a newly established mercenary group, it was only natural for them to lose to an old mercenary group. At this time, the other mercenary groups did not feel so strongly about Invincible anymore. 98 people against 98 people. It was considered fair. The world group leader, what do you think? Yin Zhan's smile deepened. Long Yunzhan's face was icy cold. That handsome face seemed to be covered with a layer of frost which repelled people 1,000 miles away. His azure blue eyes were like lake water as ripples appeared. Chapter 767. In other words, he, Yin Zhan, and the Invincible Mercenary Group were nothing in his eyes. On what basis? Was he, Yin Zhan, qualified? Crazy. How arrogant. It was simply arrogant and flamboyant. However, this kind of arrogance was something that no one could dislike. Looking at Long Yunzhan's expressionless and extraordinarily handsome face, his expression was still indifferent, as if his words were following his heart. Yin Zhan's face stiffened, and his smile froze on his face. That damned the world group. His ability to humiliate others was indeed one set after another. Standing on the high platform, he could clearly see the expressions on everyone's faces. Everyone in the mercenary corps looked at him with a mocking gaze. It was as if they were treating him like a clown. Yin Zhan was so angry that his entire body was trembling. However, due to his image in the eyes of outsiders, he was famous for his elegant demeanor and elegance. No matter how furious he was, he had to maintain a gentle expression on his face. He glared at the blood demon mercenary corps from the corner of his eyes. Bearded Man then regained his senses as he swiftly stood up and spoke in a loud and clear voice. Since that's the case, adding my blood demon mercenaries group to participate in the challenge, does the world group leader feel that we have the qualifications now? Xiao Jin's brows furrowed tightly. Didn't Miss Tao already expose Yin Zhan's true colors? Why is the Gorfiend group joining in the fun? Yin Xiao Yi snorted. Your Miss Tao's eloquence has failed. Xiao Jin subconsciously wanted to retort, but when he thought of Yin Xiao Yi's cold violence toward him earlier, he immediately shut his mouth. Yes, my great aunt. Oomph. Towards Xiao Jin's display of weakness, our proud Yin Xiao Yi didn't appreciate it in the slightest. Yiqing Luo lazily leaned back on the chair. Her long eyelashes fluttered, her pink lips curved, clear and shallow. There's a type of person who mingles in the pugilistic world, relying on his mouth. Her gaze fell on Yin Zhan. Yin Zhan's mouth can even bring the dead back to life. A brainless executive commander like Shun Shun would naturally be easily fooled by Yin Zhan. They looked at each other in dismay. The other mercenary groups were boiling with excitement. If Yin Zhan had said that he wanted to create a small interlude to refresh himself, they would not have been interested. But now, their interest could not be any greater. The Blood Demon Mercenary Group was an old mercenary group with a good reputation in the inner realm. It was a silver mercenary group. He actually participated in this challenge as well. Should it be said that the World Mercenary Group was too eye-catching, attracting the attention of many large mercenary groups. They should be wiping their cold sweat for the World Mercenary Group. They had become the target of the large mercenary groups. The Blood Demon Mercenary Group is a silver mercenary group. The difficulty of their missions is higher than yours. Yin Zhan had instructed Big Beard to memorize these words, so he was able to recite them smoothly. Since I am participating in the challenge, the Blood Demon Mercenary Corps will do the same. We will only send 98 people to participate in the challenge. Even the Silver Plate Mercenary Group had stood out, and if the World Group didn't accept it, then they would really become the laughingstock of the mercenary world. Long Yunzhan's brows furrowed slightly as ripples appeared in his azure eyes, and he seemed slightly impatient. Qiao Jin and Yin Xiao clenched their fists tightly, their faces filled with rage. Zhao Bo also couldn't sit still as he kept shooting his gaze towards Yiqing Luo and Long Yunzhan's direction, wanted to open his mouth to analyze the current situation. But on seeing Long Yunzhan's gloomy, cold gaze, all his words were stuck in his throat. Chapter 768. Long Yunzhan shook his head faintly as his eyes squinted, staring intently at the stage where Yin Zhan's expression had already reverted back to a complacent look. The arc on the corners of his eyes turned chilly. Why? Student Yiqing Luo, isn't your the World Mercenary Group very powerful? Aren't you relying on the fact that you have the support of the Overlord and are especially arrogant? A sharp voice was heard from the crowd. Shangguan Liuli, who was dressed in a jade-green long dress, stood at the corner of the Mercenary Association with her arms crossed as she leaned against the wall. Her face was filled with cold ridicule, filled with contempt and disdain towards the World Group. Fifth Miss Shangguan, I heard that this Miss Yi is a student from Devil Class, that Waste Class in Heavenly Academy. How powerful can the group she leads be? Besides Shangguan Liuli, eldest Xiong's group of brothers chimed in one after another. How could these mediocre mercenary groups possibly know about Heavenly Academy's matters? The answer was self-evident as to who taught them to say these words. Damn it! Earlier in the marketplace, they were so arrogant and despotic, even daring to beat up the law enforcers. Now on seeing Invincible Group and Blood Demon Group's challenge, this bunch of waste are terrified. Pooey, a bunch of useless fellows, still dare to say that Leader Yin isn't qualified to challenge you? I'm telling you, you bunch of waste totally have no right to compete with Leader Yin. To put it bluntly, these mercenaries in the lower levels of the market were just hooligans. Under Shangguan Liuli's instigation, all of them started to hurl insults, which were extremely unpleasant to hear. All sorts of unbearable vulgarities started to spew out from their mouths. Shangguan Liuli covered her mouth as she giggled. Don't say that. At least they are disciples from the Imperial Palace. The surrounding mercenary groups could hear the hidden meaning in Shangguan Liuli's words. They couldn't help but feel indignant for the Overlord. The Overlord had chosen 10 over-disciples from the Imperial Palace out of goodwill to help Yiqing Luo establish a mercenary group. Yiqing Luo was from Heavenly Academy's Waste Class, Devil Class's student. No matter how strong Yiqing Luo's ability was, being allocated to Devil Class meant that the Academy had deemed Yiqing Luo as a waste. A waste had led the Overlord's Imperial Palace's disciple to become waste. These mercenary groups didn't know much about the Academy's affairs. Naturally, he didn't understand how Yiqing Luo broke the Heavenly Academy's record and so on to prove her ability. Yiqing Luo naturally understood the deep meaning behind Shangguan Liuli's words. The corners of her mouth curled into a cold arc. She narrowed her eyes, and stared at Shangguan Liuli with a faint smile. It had only been a few days since they last met, but Shangguan Liuli seemed to have become much smarter. He actually knew how to use the Emperor Palace's disciples to suppress her. Yiqing Luo couldn't help but laugh out. He didn't know if Shangguan Liuli's mind suddenly became sober after the torture, or was there someone guiding him from shadows? However, right now, Yiqing Luo had to admit that Shangguan Liuli's move was extremely ingenious. Of course, even if Shangguan Liuli didn't use DMO Xian or the Imperial Palace to ridicule her, she would still accept this challenge. Regardless of what Shangguan Liuli was plotting to unite invincible and blood-fiend mercenary groups, it didn't matter. To the World Mercenary Group, this was a pretty good challenge. Since Blood-Fiend Mercenary Group and Invincible Mercenary Group have already appeared, I, a small group like the World, have no choice but to comply. An icy cold voice was heard, clear and deep. Chapter 769. The coldness on Long Yunjan's face had already faded away as his brows were filled with unhappiness. Now, are you satisfied? Shangguan Liuli was pierced by his gaze as her entire body turned stiff as she stood dazed on the spot. The hooting, bearded man and that complacent Yunjan were also stunned. What was he trying to pull off? Why did the World Group's group leader display such a helpless look? This wasn't their misconception. Those melon-spectating mercenary groups saw Long Yunjan, who had been maintaining his cold and aloof state, revealing such an expression and hearing the anger hidden in his words. Those melon-spectating mercenary groups who were standing on the Blood Demon Group's side earlier now stood on Long Yunjan's side. Yiqing Luo was about to slap the table and burst out laughing as she couldn't help but gave Long Yunjan a thumbs up. Didn't Yunjan want to join forces with Bearded Man to use the fearsome gossip to force the World Group into their trap? Now, Long Yunjan was giving them a taste of their own medicine. Long Yunjan's intention was, I agreed to it because you forced me. You old groups can't bear to see the newly established group being the center of attention and jealous of our new group. Your old groups can't tolerate a new group with potential. Many mercenary groups at the scene had this kind of mentality, but on the surface they still displayed the attitude of a senior, encouraging the new group, admiring the new group with potential, etc. Right now, Invincible and Blood Demon Group were obviously overbearing, wanting to destroy the World Mercenary Group with potential. I won't waste everyone's time. Blood Demon Group, and the World Group's mission will be left at the end to draw. Saying that, Yunjan escaped down the stage. The elder received Imo Hanshang's hint and didn't say anything as he continued to read the numbers at the back. Perhaps these mercenary groups wanted to see what kind of mission these three mercenary groups who had participated in the challenge would draw. The speed of drawing random missions was extremely fast, but within the time it took to burn an incense stick, the entire random mission activity was only left with these three mercenary groups. Yiqing Luo's vision shot towards Zhao Bo's direction. Zhao Bo understood her meaning as he immediately stood up and walked up the stage. Zhao Bo, just as the entire crowd was silent, waiting to see what mission the World Mercenary Group would draw, a furious howl was suddenly heard from the back. A man dressed in green old clothing stood up as he pointed at the World Group's representative. I've not expected you to really go to the World Mercenary Group. You traitor. Lanling Nuo, who was by her side, also stood up, and her gaze was like a torch as she looked directly at Yiqing Luo, her gaze searching one round around her. As if he did not see the person he was looking for, a trace of imperceptible disappointment appeared on his face. This gaze was naturally noticed by Yiqing Luo. She turned her head around lazily and squinted her eyes as she casted a fleeting glance at Ji Tsongtian and immediately retracted her gaze. Standing on the high platform, Zhao Bo's face darkened. He clenched his fists tightly as if he was trying his best to restrain his anger. He looked at Yiqing Luo and hung his head guiltily. Vice Group Leader, don't bother about unimportant people. Let's go and draw our mission. Yi Qing Luo said calmly. Her voice was clear and melodious. It wasn't loud, but it wasn't soft either. Don't bother about unimportant people. Go and draw our mission. Jitsong Tian flew into a rage as the veins on his face popped out. Yi Qing Luo, I've long seen that you have ill intentions for getting close to our Blue Dragon mercenary group. So this is what you're planning. You poached the mercenary group, which I had painstakingly nurtured. Poaching. Chapter 770. At this very moment, these mercenary groups were no longer as impatient as before. Over the years, they had been muddling around in various missions, and their mental state had always been highly tensed. Today they were waiting for a random mission in the Mercenary Association to let themselves relax and rest. When they met with such a matter, the Mercenary Association's elder didn't say anything, so they just treated it as a show. Poaching this matter to mercenary groups was a huge taboo. Mercenary groups, as the name implied, relied on mercenaries. With mercenaries, there would be mercenary groups. The minute they joined a mercenary group, the most important thing for a mercenary was to ensure their loyalty towards the mercenary group. Because mercenary groups usually fought in groups. Everyone would become brothers who would go through life and death together. After experiencing life and death, their relationship would become even more unwavering. Hence, if any mercenary group was exposed that a certain mercenary had betrayed the mercenary group and joined another mercenary group, they would definitely be reviled by the entire mercenary world. This was a kind of betrayal. When Jitsong Tian went out of the world group to poach someone, he even openly brought him to this random mission drawing location. It could be seen that this mercenary who was poached over definitely held an important position in the world group. But no matter what position condition the world group gave him, he should not betray Blue Dragon Mercenary Group. Instantly, all the mercenaries frowned as their faces were filled with ridicule and disgust toward Zhao Bo. Their gazes towards Long Yunzhan and the others were filled with disdain. They looked down on people who poached other mercenary groups, mercenaries from the bottom of their hearts. Yunzhan and Big Beardy, who were standing by the side, waiting to draw a random mission, exchanged glances as they saw the joy in each other's eyes. Even Heavens was helping them. They had not expected the world group to poach a mercenary from Blue Dragon Mercenary Group. Poaching was a huge taboo in a mercenary group. They could almost imagine the scene of the world group being condemned by everyone. Perhaps they didn't even need to make a move. The world group would be completely destroyed. Zhao Bo stood by the side of the crystal screen, and as a cultivator, how could he not hear the discussions of those mercenaries below the stage, and how could he not feel those mercenaries' gazes? These, when he decided to leave Blue Dragon Group, he had already thought of such a situation. He didn't care, but these people were not only ridiculing him. There was also the world group. To him, the world group was his second home and also the last home that he had decided to settle on. If because of him, this family would be implicated, his conscience would never be at peace for the rest of his life. Zhao Bo looked at the crystal screen in front of him and suddenly became timid. He couldn't draw this random mission. He could not implicate the world group. Clenching his fists tightly, Zhao Bo was about to turn around and leave the stage to explain everything to Yi Qing Luo. However, an extremely lazy female voice entered his ears. Zhao Bo, hurry up. Commander Yin and Executive Commander Shun are still waiting for you. Zhao Bo's expression turned ugly. He opened his mouth, wanted to say something. But when he met Yi Qing Luo's half-squinted eyes, his body suddenly stiffened. Following that, Yi Qing Luo's lips curled up slightly, revealing an extremely gentle smile. That smile, like the warm sunlight, poured into his heart. Inexplicably, his body seemed to be filled with power. Zhao Bo's tightly clenched fists loosened one by one. The expression on his face had also regained his confidence and calmness. Raising his hand, he printed his member's badge and number tag on it. A scroll suddenly popped out and landed steadily in Zhao Bo's hands. Chapter 771. Low Grade. Experience Mission. 5 points of Mercenary Group Credit Points. Yin Zhan and Bearded Man were dumbstruck. It was actually a low-grade experience mission. 5 points of credit points. Even if it was double the reward, it was only 10 points. What kind of luck did the World Group have? They had drawn the lowest and easiest mission. Earlier they had gone through a challenge competition with the World Group, unless they had also drawn a low-grade experience mission. Otherwise, they would not be able to win at all. Even if Shangguan Liuli sent someone to create trouble, this kind of simple mission could be settled in minutes. The two mercenary groups were in a complete mess. The other mercenary groups were sighing endlessly. The World Group's luck was just a little too good. Zhao Bo took the scroll and was about to leave when he heard Yiqing Luo say, "Zhao Bo, give up this mission." What? Zhao Bo was stunned. Give up this low-grade experience mission? Hadn't group leader already accepted this challenge? If they were to give up, wouldn't they be giving up the chance to win for sure? And to spend 100 points of mercenary group credit points. Not only was Zhao Bo unable to believe it, the others were also unable to believe that Yiqing Luo would actually give up a sure-win mission. Didn't they want to win the challenge against the two mercenary groups? Or because their poaching had been discovered and they were worried that they would be bombarded by the other mercenary groups, so they intentionally gave up the chance to win for sure, to divert their attention? Yin Zhan was in even more disbelief. A sure win chance. Why would the World Group give up on it? What on earth were they planning? In case someone finds an excuse to say that we relied on luck to win. Yiqing Luo brushed her fine black hair as she slowly stood up. That devastatingly beautiful face was filled with a sneer of ridicule. The World Group not only have absolute luck, we also have absolute ability. Her sonorous and forceful voice, word by word, was like an oath as it struck everyone's heart. Zhao Bo's blood was boiling as his eyes were filled with determination and faith. A decision was formlessly formed in his heart. All right, he passed the scroll to the elder. The World Group, give up this random mission and request to use the second chance. Random mission activities indeed had the rule of giving up and second chance. The elder nodded. Just as Zhao Bo was about to draw for the second time, Yiqing Luo propped her chin with her fingertips as she raised her brows and smiled. We've already drawn once. Let's let Captain Yin and Executive Captain Shun draw first. Zhao Bo retreated to the side to make room. There was no need to doubt the randomness of the Mercenary Union's random mission screen. Yin Zhan wasn't afraid that Yiqing Luo would play some tricks on the mission. He walked directly to the side of the screen. Before he drew, he seemed to have thought of something. For the sake of fairness between the three mercenary groups, we will add one more request. Speak. Just as you said, mercenary groups have absolute luck and absolute strength. I agree with this statement. The corners of Yin Zhan's lips curled up. Therefore, our challenge this time is not just a competition to see who completes the mission first. We are also competing to see who gets the most generous rewards during the mission. This was truly a test of a mercenary group's luck and strength. To be honest, Yin Zhan's request was too much. Yin Zhan and Big Beard had obviously joined forces. Big Beardy was the executive leader of the Silver Blood Demon Group. The chances of getting a high-level mission from a Silver Blood Demon Group was much higher than the two Bronze Blood Demon Groups. Naturally, the rewards were the most generous. Moreover speaking, Yin Zhan had 2 chances to draw a random mission. Big Beardy also had 2 chances, whereas for Zhao Bo, he was left with one last chance. Chapter 772. It was obvious that the two mercenary groups had teamed up to bully the World Group. But Melon Eater Mercenary Group's crowd expressed that if it wasn't for the World Group poaching, they would definitely speak up for the World Group. But the matter of the World Group poaching made them develop a sense of disgust towards the World Group. At this moment, naturally no mercenary group would stand out to speak up for the World Group. On the contrary, they couldn't wait for the World Group to lose to the other two mercenary groups. Zhao Bo's brows creased tightly as his voice was filled with anger. Captain Yin, your request is too harsh. Harsh? Yin Zhan shrugged his shoulders innocently. I'm merely targeting the logic in Miss Ye's words and raising out my request. How is it harsh? Pausing for a moment, his smile became even gentler. You feel that my request is harsh, which means you're denying the logic in Miss Ye's words. You. Zhao Bo's face flushed red, but he had no way to rebuke him. Seeing Zhao Bo being deflated till he couldn't say a single word. Jitsong Tian, who was acting as a shit-stirrer, laughed coldly as he shouted at the top of his voice. Zhao Bo, you traitor who betrayed the Blue Dragon Group, still not going to scram off the stage. What rights do you have to stand on the stage? Zhao Bo's muscles tensed up. It wasn't because of Jitsong Tian's insults, nor was it because of Yin Zhan's shamelessness. But because of him, he had embarrassed the World Group. He felt that he had let the World Group down. Hell, a light laugh rang in this atmosphere, as it was exceptionally clear. Everyone's gazes followed the direction of the laughter. Captain Yin is indeed an obedient dog, listening to whatever its master says, so obedient. Yi Qing Luo's smile was coquettish as her figure swayed slightly, and she had already leapt onto the stage, standing beside Zhao Bo. Her fair little hand directly placed on Zhao Bo's shoulder. Zhao Bo, no matter which mercenary group you were in previously, who you followed, or what happened to you. But now, you only need to remember one thing. You're a member of the World Group, my brother. Melon Eater mercenary group exploded. There was no one else who dared to openly poach people from the World Group. There was only one group and no one else. Since Captain Yin is so obedient, as the master, if I don't agree to it, wouldn't it seem too unreasonable? Yi Qing Luo finished her words and turned her head over as she looked at Yin Zhan with a smile, which didn't look like a smile. Yin Zhan's entire face turned green and red from Yi Qing Luo's continuous calls of dog, dog. What the F*** are you talking about? Who are you calling? How could Big Beard tolerate it? Someone insulted his friend in front of him? He immediately flew into a rage as he raised his fist and charged towards Yi Qing Luo. Yin Zhan, stop, Big Beardy. Yin Zhan was not a broad-minded person. To be more precise, he was a narrow-minded person, being teased by Yi Qing Luo in this manner. Yin Zhan's hatred and disgust towards Yi Qing Luo grew even thicker. But on seeing that Yi Qing Luo had agreed to his request, he temporarily suppressed his anger. Now that they had allowed Big Beard to lay his hands on Yi Qing Luo in public, even if they had taught Yi Qing Luo a lesson, Big Beard would still be punished, and it might possibly affect the reputation of the Invincible Battle Group. Invincibility was equivalent to Yin Zhan's face. How could Yin Zhan bear to let his face be tainted with dirty traces? Anyway, Yi Qing Luo couldn't escape. The entire The World Group couldn't escape. Go and draw a mission. Yin Zhan finally managed to stop Big Beardy's rampage, as he speedily pushed him to draw a random mission. Big Beardy blew his beard as his eyes widened, as he heavily puffed out a gust of cold air from his nostrils, as he walked directly to the crystal screen, as he rudely printed his badge and number tag on it. A scroll bounced out as it landed in his palm. On the screen, the flowing water outlined the words, as it was faintly discernible. Chapter 773. A High Rare Quest. 80 honor points. Double that meant 160 honor points. This could be considered a high-level reward for a high-level mission. Generally speaking, even if it was a rare advanced quest, the reward would at most be 50 to 60 honor points. It would be difficult to get more than 70 honor points, not to mention the 80 honor points. Of course, the high-grade rare mission, which Yi Qing Luo had snatched from Yu Chi Peng last month, could not be compared to this. At that time, Mo Hanshang also said that this mission, no matter what, should be classified as a complicated grade mission. As the young master, Mo Hanshang had yet to ascend to the position after all. Towards the internal affairs of the Mercenary Association, it wasn't easy for him to investigate thoroughly, and he only briefly mentioned it to the elders once. In the end, they only found out that the staff member in charge of sorting the mission levels was a newcomer, so there was a mistake. The elder had already punished the staff member. Because there was no major mistake, the matter was left unsettled. Therefore, under normal circumstances, the reward for a real high-grade rare mission would at most be 60 to 70 honor points. The better ones would be 80 to 90 honor points. The Melon Eater mercenary group was stunned. Oh my god! The luck of the Blood Demon group was too heaven-defying. This kind of reward, even if Yi Qing Luo's luck was heaven-defying, to draw the Bronze Plate mercenary group's top-grade rare mission, there was absolutely no such high honor value reward. Moreover, just based on these young men and women in the World Group, even if they were to defy the heavens and draw a high-grade rare mission, they wouldn't be able to complete it. There's no need to compete. The World Group is bound to lose. There's no suspense at all. This is boring. Hurry up and draw a quest. Stop wasting everyone's time. The members of the Melon Eater mercenary group also lost their original expectations and interest in something that they could completely guess the outcome of. Yin Zhan smiled. His laughter was filled with pride. That pair of seemingly gentle eyebrows overflowed with an air of superiority. He was so confident that even his footsteps were like the wind. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that his request to compete for the mission rewards was too smart. This time it was a sure win. Yin Zhan did not feel any burden in his heart. He casually printed his number plate and the regiment commander's medal on it. The smile on his face froze the moment the mission scroll popped out. On the screen, it was printed with the same handwriting as the random mission that Xiaobo had just drawn. Low-level, training mission, 5 mercenary group honor points. The Melon Eater mercenary group was in an uproar. Yi Qing Luo sneered as her lips curled into a cold arc of ridicule. Now, Yin Zhan was probably regretting it so much that his intestines had turned green. Indeed, Yin Zhan had the urge to slap himself to death. He actually drew such a low-level mission. If he hadn't made that smart request just now, he would have been the one to win for sure. He had absolute confidence that he could complete this low-grade learning mission before Yi Qing Luo. Just by looking at the 5 honor points, he knew that it was only enough to kill an ordinary tiger or leopard at most. He could casually send someone, and the saber would rise and fall in less than half an incense stick's time. Rather than letting the Blood Demon group win this challenge, Yin Zhan naturally hoped that his team would win. This was an honor. However, Yin Zhan could not accept this mission. The reward was only part of the reason. More importantly, Yi Qing Luo had just given up on the same mission, and that was before he had even requested for the reward. If he accepted this mission now, wasn't it like slapping himself on the face and getting slapped by Yi Qing Luo? Chapter 774. So this low-level mission I choose to give up to. Yin Zhan said it in a dignified manner, putting on a look as though he was cooperating with Yi Qing Luo. The other mercenary groups understood the deeper meaning in his words, but they didn't point it out. After Yin Zhan gave up on this mission, he directly used the second chance to draw another mission. Perhaps because he had given up on the low-level mission, the Mercenary Association deducted 100 points of mercenary group's honor points, which helped Yin Zhan accumulate his luck. The second round of drawing, Yin Zhan's luck was off the charts as he drew the exact same high-level mission as the bearded man. Looking at the top of the screen, the flowing water outlined the words, high-leveled rare mission. Yin Zhan almost screamed out in joy. His heartache over his 100 points of honor points instantly vanished into thin air. High-leveled, rare mission, 50 points of mercenary group honor points. Although it wasn't as bountiful as the Blood Demon mercenary group's reward, but among the high-leveled rare missions, this reward was considered as medium. Yin Zhan took the scroll and returned to the bearded man's side as his face was filled with unconcealable ecstasy. Over the years, the Bronze Plate mercenary groups who were able to draw the extremely low probability of a high-level rare mission was not more than 100 groups. Vice Group Leader Xiaobo's expression turned extremely ugly. Under this kind of situation, the World Group had no chance of winning at all. Even if they also drew a high-leveled rare mission and completed it before Invincible and Blood Demon Group, but their reward was absolutely not comparable to Blood Demon Group, so they would still lose. If they lost, who knew how these two mercenary groups would arrange the World Group? The World Group would probably become a joke in the mercenary world, completely destroyed. But Yiqing Luo's expression didn't change at all, as though everything was within her control. Yiqing Luo's lips curled into an enchanting smile as her eyes were long and narrow, as she shot a glance at the two men whose faces were filled with ecstasy, suppressing her voice as she laughed softly. The higher the reward, the higher the danger of the mission. Did they really think that 80 points of Mercenary Group honor points was so easy to get? Moreover, the time limit for taking part in the random mission was only 3 days. Blood Demon Group was a silver plate mercenary group, and their ability was displayed there. 4 high-leveled rare missions. If they spent some time and energy and threw in some manpower and financial resources, there was a possibility of completing it. But unfortunately, Blood Demon Group took part in the challenge against the World Group and even offered to send 98 Mercenary Group to take part in the mission. 3 days, 98 Mercenary Group. Could he really complete this advanced rare mission with a heaven-defying reward? Looking at Yin Zhan's Invincible Mercenary Group, it had already been 3 to 5 years, but it was still a bronze mercenary group. It could be seen that the overall strength of Yin Zhan's mercenary group was average. Yin Zhan's eloquence was the main reason he was able to make it this far. A high-rank rare quest. Even if he managed to draw it, he would still need to have the ability to complete it. When Xiaobo heard this, he nodded in realization. Yes. When he was in Blue Dragon Mercenary Group, Xiaobo had some understanding of similar mercenary groups. It was impossible for Yin Zhan's team to handle high-level rare missions. Even if he drew a rare advanced quest, he wouldn't be able to complete it, let alone get the reward. Especially when Yin Zhan boasted shamelessly that only 98 mercenary groups would challenge them. Sadly, Yin Zhan was still complacent and was completely unaware of it. Miss Yi, it's your turn. Yin Zhan beamed as he looked at Yiqing Luo. I hope Miss Yi will always be that lucky. Yiqing Luo didn't say a word as she walked directly to the crystal screen, and according to the procedure, she drew the mission. This was the World Group's last chance to draw a random mission. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.